You said this place couldn't break you. That's what she said. Let's see.
You're so strong. You're so strong. Just no. I know. It's all just a dream.
What if all this was designed just to see how we react?
What if this place is trying to torture me?
What if the people these monsters are killing, what if they're all in on it? What if this is all some kind of fucked up experiment?
What if the answers are out there, maybe we just didn't go out far enough?
We'll suffer in ways you can't even imagine. You're all gonna die screaming. You think you need to be the hero. You think you need to be responsible to save them. You don't have to suffer anymore. You don't have to be afraid. It's okay. None of this matters.
Stop. So whatever this thing is, it just lets you come in here for a little chat?
It knows you won't listen. It wants you to fight. It wants you to have hope that you could actually win.
Why?
Because hope is what makes you willing to suffer. Hope is what made you leave me alone when I needed you the most. It's not your fear that feeds the forest boy. It's hope. They'll just die tomorrow.
No. You don't break me. You hear that? You don't fucking break me!
That is right, ladies and gentlemen. You do not break Boyd. Although I get the feeling in season 3, it looks like the monsters are certainly going to attempt to break him, if nothing else. But welcome one, welcome all. So glad to have each and every one of you here this evening to dive into all things from season 3 and take a look at some of these incredibly original and awesome monsters that we have come to know and love, and see if we can see just what exactly their deal is going to be in season 3, and are they potentially evolving their tactics? I am looking forward to it. I really hope the monsters have a much bigger role in season 3 compared to season 2. We know the Cicada entity kind of came into the forefront, which was understandable. They needed to kind of explore that narrative, but hopefully the monsters come back in a big way in season 3.
Yeah, and I think we've really put a lot of hopes on that, that the monsters actually will become a formidable force again, and they don't have to come up with a whole new thing. I mean, they are completely adequate as they are. We haven't really even scratched the surface as to what their origins are, what their capabilities truly are. We have a lot of assumptions. We have a lot. We've been led to believe a lot of different things, but we haven't been told anything, precisely. So hopefully some of that will get clarified in this upcoming season. They have a lot of ground that they can cover, a lot of a lot of things that they can tell us without really spoiling anything in the grand scheme of the show. So
the monsters are definitely very much still shrouded in mystery. I mean, we know what they're capable of for the most part, but in terms of their motivations, how they were created, there's still just so much about these monsters that we just simply don't know yet. How they know what they know, how exactly they operate, so much stuff that, like you said, they can really explore so many different avenues with the monsters without spoiling too much overall of the general overarching themes and plots of the show. So yeah, I really hope the monsters come back in a big way in season 3. And judging off that teaser trailer we got, it's looking like that might be the case.
Yeah,
Old
we get some
cowboy monster.
a little bit of quality time with our monster friends. That's just, and
Indeed.
I think it was good to introduce the entity, but I personally felt that they kind of either misfired or they felt like the cicada thing, and I don't know if they tried to do too much or they thought it was more fearsome than it really was. Maybe it didn't strike home with the audience, but it
Mhm.
felt like that whole. If they had been doing the sleep deprivation thing, oh my God, nobody can go to sleep because they attack you in your dreams. If they didn't wait till the end of the season for that, if they had been doing that for more than essentially for the characters more than a day, because really they had like a
Mhm.
day of no sleep. That was not, it's like, I can do that,
Yeah, I could do a day, maybe 2 if I really had to, but then you're starting to push it. But no, like you said, I mean, it feels sometimes it feels like so much time passes for us as the audience, waiting week after week for new episodes to come around, seeing night turn to day. So sometimes it might seem like weeks or even months are passing for the audience, but really, like you said, in the terms of the actual show itself, the Matthews family have only been in Fromville for a few weeks up until this point, maybe a few months at most in terms of season 1 and 2, the events of both. So yeah, time moves a little bit differently here in From, at least compared to us here in the audience.
Right. Yep,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but again, like you said, there's so many different ways that they can go with this third season. I feel like season 2 left off with so many incredible cliffhangers and big questions, and setting some interesting things up for season 3 with Tabitha and Boyd and Jade and Victor and everyone else. They really do have not an open canvas, but a pretty big canvas to work with when it comes to the show in terms of where they want the narrative to go. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
Right.
I am looking forward to it. But I guess before we dive into all of that, we should do what we normally do here, and that is say what is up to the awesome, coolest chat in all of YouTube in the building. Let's see who's in the building this evening, shall we? I see Kiwi Skirt in the house. What is up, Kiwi? Always good to see you, my friend. Welcome, welcome. I see BK in the building. Welcome, BK. We got Kromonacle in the house, throwing up the cowboy emoji, and hell yes, I second that. Let's get those cowboy monster emojis in chat. As much as I really do miss Smiley, and I do miss Smiley, he brought a very kind of uneasy feeling to every single scene that he was in. Even though I really miss Smiley a lot, I am really looking forward to seeing a lot more from the cowboy monster. It looks like he's kind of judging. I mean, if this trailer was any indication, it looks like he could potentially be becoming the new quote unquote Smiley monster in terms of being one of the main monsters we see. And I think if that is the case, they picked a good monster to kind of take up that role. The cowboy is creepy.
Yeah. Where Smiley had just that really menacing and creepy smile without saying anything. It's Cowboy, and I was wondering, how can you replace somebody like Smiley? I mean, because that was just how that character or how the actor looked. He
Mm-hmm.
had that ability. But yeah, it looks like Cowboy's got that little drawl, that little demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like almost a little more taunting, a little more.
Yep.
And he's been working on that. I mean, he kind of had that in season 2. Hey, just come on out when he was taunting.
Yeah,
Oh, fuck,
you'll feel better if you come on outside.
yeah. So yeah. Um, so yeah, it
Yeah.
looks like he might, and who knows how much screen time he's going to have, but so
Hmm.
far the guy's made the most of it. Made the
Yeah, he's
most of what
definitely
he's
made an
got.
impression.
Yeah.
Definitely made an impression, yeah. Which is exactly what Smiley kind of did for us in season 1 and in season 2. I mean, Smiley was in a handful of scenes, didn't have much dialogue, but he just left an impression on everybody. Like you said, just from that smile alone and his very demeanor. So it's going to be interesting. Although the cowboy does also have some backup with him, and I really do enjoy some of the cowboy's backup. In particular, the creepy nurse that we did get a small glimpse of in the season 3 trailer. So I'm hoping we see a little bit more of this creepy nurse as well, because She's great. I love this nurse.
Yeah.
Super
And
great.
slightly dirty, slightly dusty too. She needs to
Yeah.
go to the laundry.
Yeah, needs a little dust off. A little dust off. We got Chicago Made Gaming in the house. What is up, Chicago Made? Welcome, welcome. Cromknuckle says, before typing anything, you should close the chat, go to the like button, and press it because Jeremy is the best from reviewer slash YouTuber that there is in town, and he deserves it. Well, thank you so much for that, Cromknuckle. I don't necessarily agree, but I very much appreciate the compliment. Thank you, my friend. We got Golden Child in the house. What is up, Golden Child? Good to see you, my friend. Welcome, welcome. We got Tim in the building as well. I do agree with this, though. However, Cromknuckle, definitely one of the most epic entrances that we have for all of the streams that we do. And again, big shout out to our other co-host Aldous for whipping together that intro for us. I love the Fromville intro. It's definitely my favorite one. Song is just catchy, and it's very fitting for this show, I think. We got Bitey in the house. What is up, Bitey? Welcome, welcome. Good to see you as well. I see Sean M in the building. Welcome, Sean M. I see Bill D in the house as well. Welcome, Bill D. Good to see you guys. And I've been taking a little peek into the Discord when I can. I don't spend a whole lot of time in there lately, especially now that my day job has been going back to full force. But I did recently poke in there today, and it looks like a lot of you guys are diving very deep into the Celtic Fae mythology and lore and applying it to some of the aspects that we see here in From. And I think that is an awesome, awesome angle to kind of discover and see what's there, because there's so many similarities with some of the Celtic versions of fae and fairies. They're not always the cute little things flying around sprinkling pixie dust. These fae are much darker, much more described as monsters even. So I really like you guys kind of going into that territory and seeing what you can apply to Fromville with it. Very interesting stuff you guys are talking about there in the Discord. Awesome, awesome. We got Julie Barbara in the house as well. Welcome, Julie. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome, welcome. We got Emily Rose in the building as well. I see Sophie in the chat. What is up, Soph? Good to see you, my friend. We got Seba. What is up, Seba? Good to see you. Always awesome to see some new names in the chat. Everybody is certainly welcome here. If you guys are a From fan, then this is definitely the place for you, because we love not only diving into all things From, but we really love hearing from you guys, the chat. We want to know what you guys think. What theories do you have? What are you hoping to see in Season 3? What answers are you hoping to get? We want to know what you guys have to say and think about Season 3 as well. So definitely do not be shy and let us know your thoughts throughout the night. Hope feeds the forest, says Bill D. And it was an interesting line there that we get at the end of Season 2 with with Boyd's wife. Well, obviously not really his wife, but the apparition of Boyd's wife, which is most likely the entity kind of manipulating him, saying that no, it's not fear that feeds the forest, it's hope. And in some ways, I can think how that would make a little bit of sense. And even Boyd himself kind of had a similar feeling towards the end of Season 1 when him and Sarah are in the woods. And right after he gets bit by all the spiders, he's got no energy, he's really exhausted. And that's what he says. This place gives you hope just to snatch it away. So I could definitely see some aspect of this place feeding on hope as well as fear. Because it definitely seems like there's a fear aspect as well.
Right. Absolutely. And it could just be that, it was clearly, obviously not his wife. So were they trying to manipulate him? Were they trying to get him to, oh, well, hope feeds hope is what it feeds on. I'll just give up hope. I mean, she was pretty dead set on him not doing anything with that torch, not doing anything with that music box. It's like, don't touch it, don't look there, look over here, don't look at that music box, don't even worry about that music box. I just thought it was super cool throughout the season when the music box manifested itself. You could see it in the clinic when they had that awesome dream sequence with Mari. They went out of their way. I mean, in this show, I don't think anything really is accidental.
Hmm.
But they had shown the music box with some scorches, some scorch marks, some burn marks,
Yep.
stuff like that, and it had appeared in other visions without those. So I don't think they put those there by accident. So I wonder how they're going to wrap that in. I wonder how they're going to connect that. The music box in its scorched form, in its its
Mm,
slightly burned form versus the it's perfectly intact form, clean form, because I think it was
yeah.
perfectly clean when he was down there with Martin in the uh, first time around,
Yeah,
but
I have
then
to go back and check. I'm not 100% sure, but you might be right. And I do remember when we see it in the scorched form, at least, even one of the legs is broken off too on the actual ballerina inside the music box. So yeah, I wonder what that means. Like, what are they trying to tell us as the audience? What are they hinting at having those scorch marks on the music box? Does that mean someone else tried to destroy it in the past and failed, maybe, and Boyd is kind of finishing the job? I don't know.
right,
It's
right,
definitely
right.
means something. Though.
Yeah, and it was way before it was way before he did take the torch to it, so it wasn't like uh it was
Yeah,
intact, then it got burned, and then it got reassembled in some way.
yeah,
'Cause,
yeah.
and we saw in your in the intro, he stomped, it was burning, and he stomped it to pieces too, so it wasn't like it was just easily reassembled, re-put back together.
Yeah.
And so
And it looks like
I'm satisfied that it's destroyed.
I do think it's destroyed. I mean, it looks like Boyd destroyed the physical one. I mean, the ones that we were seeing in all of these dream sequences seem to be projections of the real one, but it looks like Boyd destroyed the real one. The question is, what consequences are going to come from destroying that music box? I know seemingly on the surface, it looks like that music box being destroyed kind of defeated the entity or thwarted the entity's plans, but
Mhm.
who knows? Maybe that was just a little sleight of hand trick, and maybe the monster wanted Boyd to smash that thing the whole time.
Yeah, and that's going to be one of the big questions for season 3. I mean, he smashes it, and now he's back out and onto back out into the forest. To see the effects of what smashing the music box did, he has to get back to town and compare the
Yeah.
world prior to versus the world after
Did
the
anything
smashing.
change? Yeah.
Yeah, he has to
Mhm.
see. So that's a lot of. I mean, they have a lot of ground to cover in season
They
3.
do. They
I
do.
hope so, man. I hope they do. I hope they do well.
Mhm.
And even the little bit that we've been shown in the previews and the trailers and whatnot. And that is, I mean, again, I know we've gotten a lot of mileage out of
Yeah.
these short clips, but I mean,
Mhm.
remember, man, these are all this is over the course of the entire season. And we've gone into how the blood is on his shirt, and how
Yeah.
this and what clothing he's wearing, this person's
Mhm.
wearing in this scene,
Who's
and
in the
who are the
barn with
people in the
him?
and
Yeah.
who's being pushed in the wheelbarrow, and
It was kind of like
all
a
this stuff.
again. Sorry.
No, yeah, you're right.
It was the perfect kind of 30 seconds for them to drop in terms of getting all of our wheels spinning. I know I've said this in the past, but it's so true. If you're going to pick a perfect 30 seconds to release to the audience to kind of get all the theories going, it was a pretty good 30 seconds to show us kind of just cloaked in mystery from start to finish.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and yeah, the barn scene versus the aftermath. I mean, what we can only assume is the aftermath scene. Uh,
Hmm.
Boyd's wearing the same shirt in both the barn and the wheelbarrow scene.
Yeah,
They are in the daylight in the wheelbarrow. Uh, so you're assuming that it's at least at some point, but all that stuff could have been happening in episode 9 and 10. There could be a huge road, a huge amount of 8 full hours of show prior to any of
before
that
we get
stuff
to
happening.
that. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
that the little 30 seconds that we did get, Boyd being held captive in the barn with the cowboy monster, I will be very surprised if that comes in episode 1. I don't think that is an episode 1 scene. I get the feeling that is definitely happening a little bit more into the season. I don't think that's an episode 1 scene. I could be wrong, but something tells
Mhm.
me that that is definitely a little ways into the season before we'll get to that scene.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and presumably, if the monsters are active, then that indicates that that's happening in the evening. Did they see? I heard just like in passing that somebody said, "Oh, you could see daylight through the slats in the barn or something."
It's
Or
tough to tell. I'll bring that still up too, and we'll take a look at it. But
okay,
first, let me
yeah,
say
yeah.
thank you to Awesome Kiwi Skirt for gifting 5 memberships. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 memberships gifted by the Awesome Kiwi Skirt. Thank you so much, Kiwi, for the gifted memberships. You guys know what that means. Definitely
Yeah.
deserves a whoa.
Scrago Tape Shop is now a member. Dip the Reaper is now a member. Ricky ATD is now a member. Crazy Mad is now a member. And Mandy RD is now a member. Thank you, Kiwi Skirt.
Welcome, one. Welcome, all. Thank you so much, Kiwi, for the gifted memberships. Always been a huge supporter of the channel, Kiwi Skirt has, and a good friend as well. So thank you, Kiwi.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Members new and
Um,
old, be sure to avail yourself of the custom emojis, of which there are many from specific ones. I love the talisman when it's so I even use that
yeah,
with my outros. I mean, I
yeah,
use
the talisman
the
one
bell
is
for the
great.
intro and the talisman for the outro. That's right.
Hmm. Yeah, in terms of, I like to kind of swap them out every once in a while. I like to keep the channel emojis fresh, always putting new ones in. But if there's one emoji that's probably never going to go anywhere, well, two, it's the Ravener fan club and the talisman. Those two, and the Roquefort. Those three are not going anywhere anytime soon. Um, but yeah, in terms of could the monsters potentially be coming out during the day, it seems like a lot of those theories were coming from these shots right here. If you look in the background, you see the cracks in between. It's kind of hard to tell if it's just moonlight kind of lighting up the scene back there, or if this is potentially during the day. But it seems like a lot of the monsters coming out during the day, or the barn scene happening during the day theories seem to stem from these shots right here, where when you look in between the cracks, some people are taking this to think that maybe this is taking place during the day. It's just hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to tell if that is like daytime, dusk time, or if this is maybe just the moonlight. It's really hard to
Oh,
tell.
okay. Yeah, and I really this is a really great still of that exact situation because yeah, you could if it was like beaming daylight, that's one thing.
Yeah,
This doesn't even look like a cloudy Nova Scotia day sunlight. That to me looks. I mean, it could either be like the what they consider to be moonlight, or because the other question is if and that leads that's part of one of the things that I was thinking about regarding our topic, are the monsters evolving? Well, one of the major things that could evolve the monsters is to remove one of their limitations, and we don't really, I mean, we obviously know that they can't be killed by shooting. The one thing that we do know is they don't come out in the daytime. They're completely nocturnal.
yeah,
Now even previous seasons we've talked about, well, just because they hunt at night doesn't mean that they're vampires where they turn to dust. We've never
that
seen
they're
what happens when they
confined.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we've
yeah.
seen the bodies, we've seen like like Smiley's body was out there in the sunshine after it was dead and nothing happened. It didn't
Mhm.
turn to dust and go away. So, and I, I've brought up like, possums, skunks, all these animals that are nocturnal animals. They don't die if you bring, they prefer the evening, they prefer the nighttime,
Yeah,
but it doesn't
but they
kill
can.
them to come out in the daytime.
Yeah, exactly. And that it is a good question. Like you said, we do see, Smiley's body in broad daylight, sun beaming right on it, and we didn't see any visual adverse effects. But then again, could that just be because Smiley was already dead at that point, or is there something, or is it just simply they just don't come out during the day because they don't like the daytime? Maybe the sunlight doesn't affect them in any way. It's just they're nighttime creatures. Maybe it's these things that we don't really know about about the monsters, and it's little stuff like this that hopefully season 3 can maybe explore a little bit. I suppose if we do see a monster coming out during the daytime, that'll obviously answer all the questions that we need, and we'll know, okay, the sunlight doesn't kill them, but for whatever reason they were choosing not to come out during the day. But yeah, who knows,
Right,
maybe
right.
they are daywalkers. Maybe we'll see some daywalker
Yeah.
action with
If
some of these
yeah.
monsters.
If something changes them, and the other side of it, I mean, here I am arguing, I'll be arguing both sides of this thing. Yes, it is possible for an animal that is nocturnal to go outside, but that's also a natural thing. These things are, if they're anything, they are unnatural. They're
Yeah,
driven by some unnatural force. They're animated by some unnatural force. They're saying in the chat, who was it? It scrolled up on me. That the monsters are, they're in a weird, like when they're visited in the daytime while they're sleeping in the caves, they are in that ugly form. The glamour doesn't kick in
They seem
until
to be
they leave
sleeping
it.
in the monster
Yeah.
form. Yeah, when they're down there in those caves, it didn't look like any of them had their human form on when Victor and Tabitha were down there. Yeah.
Right. So does that just happen with the evening, or do they have to consciously do that? Do they consciously have to
Mhm.
apply that to make themselves more deceptive and make people, to put their victims, the citizens of the town, um, in that kind of like a slightly not a relaxed mode, but put their guard down. That you can't know for
Yeah.
sure exactly if this weird thing, this guy that's walking around the corner, unless you know who it is, you're like, you don't automatically think that they're a monster. And like they
Yeah.
said, that's also part of that is they said that these monsters have evolved. Remember, like Donna said, they used to scream all the time prior to the talismans.
Yes, they have changed their tactics in the past. They used to be much more animalistic. It sounds like before the talismans were around, it seems like they relied much more heavily on just primal fear. But then the talismans came around, and all of a sudden they were kind of all of a sudden the humans had a way to defend themselves. So they started leaning a little bit more to their human form, tried to rely a little bit more on coaxing and tricking, manipulating people to come outside, as opposed to just flat out scaring them before the talismans were around. So they have changed their tactics in the past. That's true.
Yeah, targeting the weak-minded, like, the one little
Yeah.
kid, Megan, and then the porn
And
stash.
then the desperate freaking 70s porn stash guy from Colony House, whose name I always forget, where Jasmine just manipulated the heck out of him. I mean, I don't think he even needs a name at this point. I know his name. I just always forget it. But 70s porn stash guy just sounds so much better. So
Was it
that's what I'm
Kevin?
going with.
Was it Kevin?
Kevin, that's it. I think it's Kevin. Yes, but
He
we're
looks
gonna
like a
call him.
Kevin, yeah.
He looks like Kevin. Yeah, Bitey and BK are saying Kevin as well. But
Okay,
I like
good.
I like 70s porn stash guy. I just feel like it fits. Purple Alizé says these monsters are probably learning behaviors from the folks. The more interactions, such as Boyd with Smiley and fake friends. Yeah, could they potentially be? Is that how they're mimicking human behavior? The more time they study the townsfolk of Fromville and the more interaction they have with them, could that in turn influence their change of tactics? And one thing I know we talked about this a few weeks ago when this trailer first dropped, but one thing I'm noticing with this trailer in particular, and in particular the barn scene with the cowboy monster, he seems to be acting much more not human per se, but nowhere near as monstery as they kind of were in season one. And maybe that's just the dialogue. Maybe the dialogue they chose to give the cowboy monster in that scene is just making him look in a little bit of a different light. But one thing I was a little bit not worried about, but kind of making a note about going into season 3 is I really hope that they don't humanize these monsters too much. I'm okay with them having some dialogue here and there, but I feel like the less dialogue they have, the better. I feel like the monsters are at their scariest when they're simply just smiling at you and walking towards you, not running, not screaming, just simply a simple creepy smile as they walk towards you. I feel like those are when the monsters are at their creepiest. So one thing I
Right.
hope that we don't see is them kind of humanizing the monsters too much. They need to keep that monster aspect intact. At least for me anyway. That's just my opinion. I know people might think differently. I just hope they don't humanize them too much.
And yeah, and I absolutely agree. I like them to be single-minded. I like them to be single-minded about, they might do different tactics. Like Jasmine was, like, she had a full-on relationship with
She was like
porn
straight up
stash.
human, Jasmine. Yeah, she
Yeah,
was like straight up human. Yeah.
but all of it. But I mean, and he was leaving her. Kevin was leaving her flowers, and that. So presumably that had gone on over a period of time. It wasn't just a
Yeah.
couple of days kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the ultimate goal for her It was do whatever she needed to do, and that's in addition to everything that like all the other monsters were doing. You know, they're like if somebody was out, happened to be caught out after dark, of course they would have taken the opportunity to attack, but she was playing the long game. She was actually really working, and it paid off in spades, because not only did she get Kevin, she opened the door for everybody
Got
else,
the
and that
whole
led to
colony
the
house. Yeah, I got the entire massacre kicking off at that point. And
So,
Henry
yeah.
Penis is totally right. That is the most Kevin-looking dude of all time.
we just saw three Kevins leave the chat in anger. Damn it.
I know, right? No, Kevin's a good name. I like Kevin. Kevin's a really good name. I have
Kevin
actually
Costner.
I have two really good friends named Kevin. And yeah, also R.I.P. to the Kevin Lannister actor Ian Gelder. That is horribly tragic that he passed away. Yes, R.I.P. indeed. Wait till the monsters evolve and catch on to using fire or torches to burn the houses at night to get people to run out. And this is something I have wondered as well. If the talismans are solely the only thing keeping these monsters out of the houses, how come the monsters haven't tried to burn any houses down yet? I have to imagine that monsters know what fire is. They do seem to know basic human tendencies, if nothing else. They know how to talk. They appear human in some cases. I have to imagine they probably know about fire at the very least. And maybe that's an indication as to fire being something that can kill the monsters, which is something I definitely think is the case. When you think about how you're going to kill these monsters, obviously the worms worked with Smiley, but the worms are in very short supply. We may never see any more worms ever again on the series. So how exactly are the townsfolk going to eventually go on the offensive and start taking some of these monsters out and taking the fight to them on a grander scale, as opposed to just killing one? And I have a feeling between beheading and fire, I get the feeling, beheading always works. There's not much things in literature that can survive its head being cut off. Between that and fire, I do get a feeling that they could probably take one of these monsters out by either cutting off its head or burning it, or both, like they did with Smiley's body. They burnt his body to get rid of it. So clearly these things can burn. So hopefully they try to use fire to try to kill one of these monsters at one point. And maybe that's why we haven't seen the monsters use fire against any of the houses to try to burn them down. Maybe fire is one of their weaknesses.
Right. And I think Mr. Bojangles is going right down the same direction that I was thinking. It could be one of the more frustrating things about season 2 is the lack of people sharing information and whatnot. Tabitha, I think she shared with Jade the existence of the underground caves with the monsters just off screen, because at one other point, Jade was just confirming this is where they are, right? But nobody has shared that information. Somebody like Randall, from the minute that happened, I saw Randall being the kind of guy that being the hothead. I don't care if there was a teaspoon of gasoline left in any of those cars in the graveyard. I'd see somebody like Randall being like, look, we know they're not out here in the daytime. We know they're sleeping in the caves. We know where they are. Why don't we just take whatever gasoline, whatever, anything? I don't care if it's, if we have to gather bundles of twigs, take it down there and set these guys on fire while they're sleeping. And just torch them in their home. And that, I'm assuming that, and I think that Mr. Bojangles is right. There might be something in the nature of the protection of the talismans that also prevents them from doing anything to the homes that are protected, setting them on, or even, because you think, well, even just busting out a window. I don't think I know that some of them have curtains and whatnot where you can't see, where the monsters can't see in, to bother the people inside, but they're not boarded up, like physically preventing them. So if you're a monster, and if it was possible for them to access their targets just by whipping a rock through the window and then climbing in that way, or and we do know that it doesn't have to be, we saw that the minute that Boyd discovered the talismans. You don't have to have a physical door or barrier. He had those talismans, and that's how he discovered them. They were
Yeah,
embedded
right
in
in the hut.
the
There was a
wall.
big opening to that hut. It didn't have a door that he opened to kind of get into the hut. He just fell through an opening. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw some people making the argument that the bush in front of the opening was a quote unquote door. And I suppose it's possible, but it looked like it was a pretty clear opening that he kind of just fell into. And yes, he didn't really need a door to protect himself. And I also saw a lot of people mention that maybe that could have been potentially because there were multiple talismans in the hut. But I
Okay.
mean, I don't know. We just don't really know how all of these things work, really. Yeah, the rules aren't 100% clear.
Right. But they also did that when they pulled the curtain in the RV, the wrecked
Yeah.
RV.
Yep.
And they were very unsure of how effective it would be.
Yep. If it would even work in the RV. Yeah. Yeah. And same
and
thing
they'll
with
find
Boyd.
out very quickly.
They found out super fast, and same thing with Boyd and Sarah later on in season 1 in the tent. Like I have to imagine that would have been the sketchiest thing, going out there with nothing but a tent and hanging the talisman in the tent and hoping that works. Is just a little bit sketchy. But yeah, we don't really know. The rules aren't 100% concrete yet, as opposed to what these talismans are and what they can do and what their ultimate use for, if they have any other uses.
Right. And that's one of the other, I mean, that was one of the things a lot of us, the chat, a lot, the fans, they're so smart, and they really, I mean, they're leading us down obvious, it's pretty obvious roads. But yeah, we need to know what the monsters can do, what they can't do. We need to know what the talismans can and can't do. And
Mhm.
that is a leap of faith, though, when you're in a tent, or when you're in an RV that's like broken glass and broken windows and stuff. What
Yeah,
counts as fully protected. And if something's
exactly.
not fully protected, then you are not protected. You're
Yeah.
eaten. There's not a whole
Mhm.
lot of and it's just like because we thought about that when we're thinking about going on the offense against monsters. Well, what if you dig a pit? What if you trick them to fall into a pit and then the sun comes up? Well, then that led to, well, Jasmine could get up on the second floor
Exactly. We don't know what they're
very easily.
capable of physically yet. Like
Yeah, yeah.
how is their agility? It seems like they have it seems like they have obviously above average human strength. But other than that, there's not a whole lot about their abilities that we know. We saw Jasmine gets on the roof. Hell, even the granny monster got up on that roof with relative ease, it seemed. And we
Mhm.
don't know exactly how that happened. Did she jump up there? Did she fly up there? Is she just very agile and kind of shimmied up there? It's like we just don't know.
Right.
But this is but that's like you said, one thing we do need to know at some point is the rules need to get a little bit clearer as to what exactly these monsters are and what their limitations are. And as Sophie brings up, if the monsters are being controlled by anything. I think that the dummy is popping up to let people that to let the people that it appears to know that the monsters are being controlled by an entity. The monsters are like the dummy; they are animated by something else. And again, that's another thing that we're not quite 100% sure what's going on with these monsters. Are they being controlled by something else? We have seen on display, not proof of, but definitely some evidence of there being some sort of hive mind potentially going on with all the monsters, where if one knows something, maybe all of them know it, because they all of them seem to know everybody's name. They seem to know intimate details about all of these people, and they all seem to know it. So it definitely seems like maybe there's some kind of hive mind thing going on here where one monster figures something out, they all know it. Or, as Sophie brings up, maybe they are actually being controlled by something else out there, and there's something else that's kind of projecting this information into the monsters, controlling them. There's just so much we don't know. We need to find out who's holding that spear at the end of the day. If the monsters are the tip of the spear, who exactly is controlling and holding the spear at the end of the day? Because I
Right.
get the feeling the monsters, I wouldn't be too surprised if they are being controlled by something else, or at least influenced by something else. That wouldn't be a
Yeah.
big surprise.
And we saw very strong evidence of that in when Randall, Donna, and Boyd were in the RV at the end of season 2,
Yeah.
where the monsters were approaching. Then, just prior to the appearance of whatever would be the entity, whatever would
Hmm.
be Boyd's wife, they all just kind of
Yeah.
backed away. There wasn't any real communication. They just all
They just
stopped
kind of
approaching.
stop.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. almost like they knew to stop right then and there. It's almost like they either knew to stop then and there, or they were told to stop then and there because the entity was about to arrive. Because, like you
Right.
said, as soon as they stop, sure as shit, not 5 seconds later, the entity shows up.
Yeah,
Um,
daddy's here. We don't have to, we don't have to
Daddy's here. Yeah, we gotta let Daddy have his fun. There, we're taking a back seat. But yeah, it's just again so many freaking questions about these monsters. But I hopefully we learn a little bit more about them in this upcoming season. But let's see what you guys are saying in the chat a little bit. We have Mike says, "What if some of them are monsters and some of them are humans that are working with the monsters?" That's again, I feel like it goes back a little bit to the whole mole theory, where some people, or a lot of people actually, were theorizing that there could be some kind of mole in town that is collaborating with the monsters. I know Christopher comes up a lot in these debates, where we're not 100% sure what happened to Christopher, but it seems like he might have had some kind of hand in the massacre. He didn't obviously kill the whole town himself. We saw the bodies with our own eyes. It very much looked like the monsters killed everybody in town. But could Christopher potentially have been collaborating with the monsters and led them to all the hiding spots so they could kill everybody?
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, if someone was actually working with the monsters, I know it was a big theory in season 2, at least.
And going right back to your hive mind theory, I mean, if there was something about what was happening with Christopher, if he knows where, and that's part of exactly why Victor's mom told him hide somewhere where Christopher doesn't know,
Yeah,
because somehow the monsters got, maybe, rather than him just like leading them, house to house or hidey hole to hidey hole to have everybody killed, Christopher could have just given them access to his mind, or
if
somehow
he
that,
knew, they
yeah,
knew.
that
Yeah.
the symbol drove him to a state of insanity where his mind was
Hmm.
completely open to any one of the monsters or the entity itself. Then they had access to all of his knowledge, which
Yeah.
which would be not a problem for them to go to every single place that Christopher knew of that people
Once they
hid.
know the locations, yeah,
Yeah,
they know where everybody's hiding ahead of time. It makes the massacre much easier to complete. And we have
yeah.
seen some small evidence of at least a very low level telepathic connection, at least between the boy in white and who he communicates with. We get that very interesting scene at the end of season 1 where the boy in white is directing Sarah and Boyd to the faraway tree. And the boy in white is speaking to Sarah, but he's not moving his lips. It's almost like he's projecting a conversation directly into Sarah's mind. So again, we have seen some small evidence of some maybe low-level telepathic connections between some of these characters already. Maybe there's something similar going on with the monsters, where again, one knows something, they all know it. Christopher knows something, maybe they could all tap into that.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's clear that obviously Sarah's getting voices from of different kinds too, voices of different natures. So she's kind of getting pulled in two directions. Not all the voices that she hears are bad, but they're not all good either.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
then meanwhile, uh, Jade's getting tormented by the symbol the same way Christopher did. We're just hoping that Jade, resists it a little better, or his hyper analytical mind, his quantum computing mind is putting him.
Mhm.
Maybe he's in a little better. If Christopher was a ventriloquist and Jade is has
A
a
tech genius, yeah,
yeah
he might have a better chance of, especially if he's very adept at working with algorithms, which he clearly is, recognizing patterns, things like that. Jade just seems like the ideal candidate to solve a mystery symbol like that. Where if Christopher, we don't really know Christopher's background yet, but I highly doubt he's a tech genius like Jade was. So yeah, maybe it just makes Jade a little bit more it equips Jade a little bit more to kind of solve these mysteries, where Christopher was probably just a normal dude.
right.
And yes, we do need a scary kid monster. We haven't seen any kid monsters up until this point. We have seen the Ankui children, which are pretty creepy in and of themselves. And I guess one could technically describe the Ankui children as monsters, but they're not like the monsters that we know, the monsters that we're talking about, the monsters that only come out at night, the shape-shifting monsters that we know and love. We haven't seen any of them be kids. We have seen one be kind of a teenager, like especially in that very first season in episode 2. We get one of the monsters who does look kind of young, the one that was talking to Julie. This one
Oh
right
yeah.
here. This
Yeah.
is
Don't you
about, I
remember
think,
me? Yeah.
yeah, don't you remember me, Julie? As far as I can remember, this is the youngest looking monster that we've seen on the show right here. He definitely looks like he's a little bit of a teenager. He even has, it looks like a varsity Letterman jacket on, for crying out loud. He looks like he's a high school kid. But other than that, I don't think we've seen any monsters that look younger than the kid. We certainly haven't seen any children monsters outside of the weird Ankui children. So,
Right. The
yeah,
cheerleader.
and
Yeah.
maybe,
This guy and the cheerleader, it seems like they're at least
yeah.
teenage or older. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, we get the cheerleader as well, who definitely looks like she could be in high school also. Yeah,
From J, and
good
both of them
point.
have the J, so I don't know what school the
Yep,
J is. Stay away from that school, guys.
exactly. Yes, whatever the J is, we see the J there and we see the J here. What exactly does that mean? I have to imagine it's not random. I have to imagine there's a J on both of these clothings for a reason.
Yeah.
And again, it just goes back to what exactly are these monsters? How did they become monsters if they were human at one point? And based on their clothing, based on the
Yeah.
autopsy, it does look like they could have been human at one point. It's just
Yeah.
it's one of the most intriguing things about this show. How did the monsters come to be? At least for me anyway. It's one of the biggest questions I'm hoping to learn. Probably
Right.
not, we probably won't learn it in season 3, but we will learn at some point what exactly the origin of the monsters are.
Oh yeah, and
Was
that'll answer
Randall?
a lot of the different stuff too. Like, why is everybody
Yeah.
seemingly stuck in the 1950s when even the numbers, even the dates that they've given us, nothing extends, into the 1950s. We don't know anything about that. But yeah,
Mhm.
everybody seems to be from the milkman to even the mechanic has
Yep.
a little bit of a retro vibe. That long,
Yeah.
like that sweater for the cheer. I mean, when's the last time? That is directly out of Greece. That's directly out of American
It
Graffiti.
is.
That is,
Yeah.
y-
Straight
you
out
know,
of the 50s and 60s. Like,
yeah,
it looks very, period correct.
yeah.
Was Randall carving new talismans? And that was another thing that we never got an answer to. I remember all of us, we were all wondering, what the heck is Randall doing with this bus? What is he carving? We see him putting one of the seats up on top of the roof of the bus, and then we see him sitting down there, and it looks like he's carving something out of wood. And a lot of us were thinking, is he potentially trying to replicate the talismans? Like, what exactly is Randall carving? Is he setting up some sort of trap for the monsters? And all of that, all of those scenes basically just went nowhere. At the end of the day, it looks like Randall was only just up there whittling away something useless and setting a seat up on top of the bus so he would just have a place to sit during the day. But yeah, we never really found out exactly what he was carving. I mean, maybe we still potentially could, but yeah, that scene didn't really go anywhere at the end of the day. It's a good point.
And that's another example of you could, even if they could, even if they found a piece of rock, or maybe they found a piece of wood, carved exactly the runes in it to make it mimic a talisman. Who wants to be the guy to test that?
Exactly. Who wants to be the first one to be the guinea pig? Like, hey, see if this thing works, pal. Not me. If memory serves, I think Fatima and Ellis hid in a closet. It wasn't exactly a closet. It was more of the front room. Like, when you go into Colony House, there's 2 sets of doors. And if you close both of those sets of doors, it does create an enclosed space right there. And that's where Fatima and Ellis were hiding during the Colony House massacre, and Fatima totally just took a random chance and hoped that it would work. And luckily enough, it did. But yes, it wasn't exactly a closet. It was about the size of a closet, but it was basically, when you go into Colony House, you see those 2 sets of doors. Technically, if you close both doors, it does create that very small enclosed space, which
Yeah.
thankfully the talisman was already in there, so they were able to stay safe.
Yeah, they're saying vestibule, foyer. It could be like a sunroom. It could
The
be
foyer, exactly. The
mud
foyer.
room.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's all
yeah,
kind. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
If anyone caught me secretly talking to a monster through a door or a window, they would put me in the box as a betrayer or a mole. No one, no talking to monsters secretly. And that's another thing. I mean, like you said earlier, Ravener, when it comes to Kevin and Jasmine, it looks like at the very least that he was probably communicating with her for multiple nights on end. They seem like they developed some sort of relationship. Like she was definitely playing the long con there. You mean to tell me not a single time nobody recognized that there's this dude talking to this freaking monster at the window every single night? No, nobody overheard them. Calling House is
Right.
pretty freaking big and pretty cramped.
Right, and the thing, man, the colony house, there's 40 friggin' people in there, and here's Kevin up there in the bathroom, man. He was there because there was a tub, and he's, you will not be monopolizing the bathroom while you're whispering sweet nothings through the window to Jasmine. What a loony, man. There's no way somebody. I'm assuming that they have plumbing among, if they have electricity. I'm hoping that they have. I'm hoping they have plumbing, man. You don't want
Yeah, it
40
seems like they
people
have plumbing. We
packed on
we
each.
did see running. Yeah, you don't want to see that. That's for sure. You'd be digging latrine pits by the end of the week. But we did see the running water does work there, and that's another question in of itself. Where does the electricity come? Obviously, but where does the running water come from? I mean, I guess it could potentially come from the Brundles if there's some kind of pipe system. But yeah, they got running water, they got electricity, all of it. And yeah, Julie Barber knows, Camel, you're going to trigger Jeremy. Yeah, this better not be the case. If this show turns out to be one big simulation, I quit. I quit. I throw my papers up in the air. I take my headphones off. I throw them against the wall, and I quit at that point. This better not be a simulation.
Yeah, that'll be Game of Thrones tier betrayal. I mean, it would
Yeah,
be, you would go from being one of the best shows around to one of the worst if you one of the
either
biggest
way.
cop outs. And we've said that. I mean, I think from the time that we fell in love with the show from season 1, we want it to be. And the thing is, we've had so many theories in the Discord, just among us talking on the shows. Everybody, almost every possible permutation of a full-on explanation for the origins of the underlying origin of this entire show. Somebody has to have been right, somebody has to have guessed correctly, and then the onus is on the writers to do something that we haven't seen before. And we're hoping that they know something that we don't. They're going in a direction that we're not anticipating. Because yeah, if it is a simulation, huge cop out. If it is,
Yeah,
just supernatural, huge cop out.
and I don't think it's going to be a simulation. I think between with all the evidence of people being physically and mentally awake in the real world when they end up here, I suppose all of it could be a part of the simulation. But I just think I feel like the writers are clever enough to come up with something that we maybe haven't thought of yet, or maybe come up with something that we have thought of, just a different version of it. But
Yeah.
I'll be super surprised if this is a simulation. I'll be very surprised.
Yeah, it's got to be a
But this is
hybrid, a hybrid or something, some
an
kind of
amalgamation of a bunch of
mixture.
different
Yeah.
things, whether it's pocket universe mixed with this and that, with purgatory. I get the feeling it's going to be something that at least hopefully we haven't thought of yet. Because like you said, between the entire From fandom, we've thought of so many different possibilities as to what is potentially going on here. I have to imagine at some point some fan somewhere has either guessed right or come very close to guessing right, because we've thought of
Yeah.
so much different stuff just here on this channel, let alone all of the other channels and all of the other Facebook groups and everything else that's talking about the show.
Oh yeah, like alien theory. I mean, if I had to pick, and and I'm not really espousing any one theory, but I always went more with the Ender's Game version of, it's like it's like a half alien, like half simulation. And that was just because there's a few things that I couldn't square up, including the infrastructure, the electricity, and we've talked about that. If you're coding a computer game, you can code it where the player can flip a light switch and the light comes on, flip the light switch, and the light goes off, but you're not going to code a full-on electrical system behind the wall, 10 feet, deep below the ground. And again, and that's just with code, things that are ones and zeros digital. We're talking about the physical world. The things that theoretically are being coded are things that appear physically in the world for these people. So, at the very least, we're assuming that the residents of the town are physical beings, that this isn't all just ones and zeros and we're watching watching Sims run around.
Yeah, we're watching The Matrix, the horror version of The Matrix. Please let that not be the case. Do you think the monsters really can't run, or are they just choosing not to because they enjoy chasing victims? And I think the line that Kenny speaks on, Kenny mentioned something about this in season, I believe it's at the end of season 1. He talks about how the monsters never run, how the monsters only walk. We never see the monsters running. And Kenny attributes it to because there's only so many places that we can eventually hide before they eventually catch us. And I thought that was potentially it. I feel like the walk just adds to the fear level of them. I get the feeling physically they probably could run. I mean, we see this monster in particular take a pretty quick swipe at Father Cautry, moved very fast by the look of it. And then again, there's the whole, how exactly did Jasmine and the granny monster get up on the roof of that house with so much ease? So I get the feeling the monsters are physically capable of being much more agile than what they show. But I get the feeling they choose to walk slow. They choose not to run. I think all of that is just part of their fear tactics. At the end of the day, at least for me anyway, maybe others feel differently, but something that just has a menacing smile that is walking slowly towards you is 10 times more scary than seeing something run towards me. At least just for me. Like if I see something running towards me, I don't think I'm going to be as creeped out as opposed to seeing something just slowly walking towards me. It's that Michael Myers, that Jason aspect of horror where sometimes a slow, creepy walk is just more frightening. Yeah. But I do think they can run if they want it.
Yeah, we saw him cover a lot of ground when they got Cautry because they weren't that close to him. And then next thing you know, it's like, hey, Father, and there goes his throat. So
yeah, I think they can. I just think they choose. Yeah, I think they just choose not to. Defeating the monsters like a selection process for the next stage. You fail, and monsterification. Oof, that could be an interesting way if it works. Man. Any possibilities the monsters are a distraction to a larger picture? I think that's definitely a possibility. Again, it goes back to that line we get from Martin telling Boyd that the monsters are, quote unquote, just the tip of the spear. And if that is the case, that would indicate that there is something much bigger and much badder out there that we haven't been introduced to yet that potentially could be an even bigger threat than the monsters are. And I do think that is the case. I think we've seen a lot of weird signs that point to maybe there being some kind of cosmic game being played here, where we're potentially seeing other larger forces at work here, whether it's the entity or other entities that we haven't been introduced to yet. It definitely seems like there are other things in here other than the monsters. At the end of the day, we see with all the chess metaphors that get thrown at us, I do tend to think that the monsters are more pawns in the overall scheme of things. And there is something out there that is bigger. Maybe the monsters are a little bit of a distraction to keep the townsfolk busy while whatever the big picture is happening is happening. But I think that's a possibility, Sweet Pea, if the monsters are potentially some kind of distraction to the overall larger picture. I think that's possible.
Yeah. And I think that was probably one of the more satisfying parts of last season when they were actually, and some of it, like the appearances of Abby or a few different things, they were kind of just, if you're cynical, you'd say it was just an exposition dump where they're explaining what the entity's plans are. And, and when Sarah said, it was happy when it landed, like talking about the cicada landing on Kenny's arm, and, it was happy when it touched you or whatever it was that she said that the entity told her or something. Remember that line when they just
Yeah,
when
it got excited. I believe she said
yeah,
excited. It got excited when it touched your arm. And that
yeah.
kind of indicated to me that this thing was getting excited, that it was starting to interact with people in the real world and not just the dream world that it seemed to be confined to.
Right. So it wasn't, they're not just in a fishbowl being hunted until there's nobody left.
Yeah.
That the entity does have an overarching goal and something about passing from one dimension to another, one level to another. Almost like I know I'm gonna go back to another Lord of the Rings analogy, but like when Sauron didn't have a physical form, and then he, for the longest time he didn't have a physical form. Then he had a physical form again. That's kind of like the difference between the entity and a invisible form, where it's just influencing things, just treating just using the
Yeah.
monsters as puppets, versus
Yeah.
being able to enter into the world and do its evil firsthand again.
Yeah.
So
Maybe it doesn't have that physical form. And I do think that could potentially have been maybe some of the entity's endgame, which, again, we have no idea what the entity's full endgame was. We saw what it did to Julie, Mari, and Randall. We heard from Sarah that once Julie, Mari, and Randall are dead, it'll quote unquote be too late at that point. But too late for what exactly? What exactly was the full end game of that entity? And I do get the feeling it could potentially have been either trying to gain a physical form or trying to escape Fromville entirely. And part of me just can't help but go back to the thought that maybe Fromville itself, this entire place, is one big kind of supernatural prison for creatures and entities. And this, I've also wondered this as well, and I think this could be an interesting addition to the show at some point, maybe in later seasons, because when Tabitha is up there at the top of the lighthouse and she looks at all of the surrounding landscape, it looks vast, absolutely vast. Obviously, the town portion of that, if you try to drive in and out of the town, you kind of keep circling back to the same town. But we do know it is possible to get beyond the town on foot in the woods. And when Tabitha is up there, it is a vast landscape out there. We have no idea what else is out there. Is there other structures, or potentially could there be even a whole other town that also has people in it? As Mr. Bojangle says, possibly there's a new area full of people that they haven't met. And I think that could be an incredibly interesting aspect to add to this show. And we did see all of, when thinking of the map and everybody that got brought here to Fromville and how and where they were traveling on the map when they got stuck here, every one of those tacks, or everyone that is in the town of Fromville that we know, our town, they all seem to be located in the United States. All of them came from the United States. But what if there's another town out there somewhere else that is, everyone from, Japan, or whatever the case is? Maybe there's other towns out there with people from other parts of the real world in them. I think it could be an interesting aspect to add to the show at some point. But yeah,
yeah,
I have a
that's a
feeling
little
they're running for
cabin in
something
the
else.
woodsy,
It's a
each
little
different.
cabin in the woodsy. Yeah, you get a bunch of different factions.
Yeah, just when, and I was always on the side when from the minute that Tabitha woke up in the hospital, I was like, no, there was, again, it split the fandom into sections. Oh yeah, she's
Mhm.
out, and then she's back in the real world, and now she's gonna have to figure out how to get either back to Fromville, or at least be able to get her family, or her kids back. That would be her overarching goal. Now she's trapped in somewhere entirely outside of Fromville, without her kids and Jim, whether she wants him or not. But she's going to have to in some way figure out how to either get back and bring everyone with her, or
Yeah.
to me, it just seemed like not another dimension, but just like another level. Like she went from level 1 to level 2, and now she's in a whole
Mhm.
nother world. And again, and that's what, we all went wild postulating, oh, she's going to run into uh
Eloise.
Eloise. She's going to run into,
Yes.
she could run into, who knows who. But the thing is, again, like we've always said, there's no mistakes, there's no accidents in this show. Probably a lot of red herrings, but
Yeah.
everything is there intentionally. And I do not think that Tabby having the lunchbox with her is a red herring. I think it is going
No,
to
that's not
be
coincidental.
critical. Yeah, that's going to be
Yeah.
critical to the next season, and that's going to. I mean, between all the answers, the monsters, the talisman, where what happens, they're going to have to reconcile all these plot lines. We're going to have to get Jade out of the caves, and I want to see what are the long-term effects for Mari and Julie and
And Randall and
Randall.
all them. Yeah.
Are they going to be unaffected? Are they going to have complete amnesia? Are they going to be fundamentally changed as characters? Are they going to appear like they're normal, and then the entity has a hook in it, like a psychic hook in them that people
Mhm.
are unaware of? All these things are things that I'm going to be waiting anxiously. And did they just said kind of like late summer, early autumn, right, for the show, for the
They said
season
fall.
3? Fall. Okay.
All they said was fall. No specific, nothing more specific than that, other than fall. But again, with Halloween coming in the fall time, I get the feeling they'll probably want From to be airing when Halloween comes around. So I very much think we'll get a late September, early October release.
Okay, that sounds good. That
At least
sounds
that's what
good.
I'm hoping for, anyway.
Yeah, the more I get in, that's why I don't do these shows every single time, because my mind just starts spinning and I start like wanting immediate satisfaction. I'm like, I
I
must
know,
know
it's like,
these.
get here already. Come on, man. Can we just skip forward to fall already? Although I don't want to skip over House of the Dragon season 2, which is just around the corner as well.
True.
So yeah, it's catch 22 for sure. The town looked like the place. Excuse me. The town looked like the place Tabitha ended up, picturesque Maine. Yeah, a lot of people were theorizing that she ended up in Maine. People were thinking, we're even narrowing it down to similar layouts of similar towns. And there's a town in Maine that looks awful similar to the town that Tabitha sees outside of the window in the hospital. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but I know it looks similar. It does look similar to that main town.
Yeah.
Although the town that Tabitha sees outside of her window, that looks like every freaking town that I grew up in Massachusetts. There's so many small towns right on the waterfront that look exactly like that. So I didn't put too much stock in the Maine thing myself. It could be Maine. But again, I see so many towns all over the Northeast that look exactly like that. So who knows?
Yeah, and that'll be one of the first things that she asks when we get to season 3 is,
Where am I?
where the heck am I? Yeah, and you never know, because I mean, it might have looked like the town is so much more vast, because Fromville is landlocked, and it's surrounded by a forest, and it's miles inland from anything, even though there's a lighthouse inexplicably. But there's nothing to say that it looked like the town that Tabitha's at. It looked like there was a little marina or something, like there was at least
Yeah.
boats there. But there's
It was
nothing
on
to
the
say
water,
that
yeah.
you can't get 2 nautical miles out into the ocean and then reappear back in the marina. It might be
Very
the same
true.
thing.
Very true. Yeah. It could very well. She could very well be stuck in some level 2 other part of Fromville entirely. Maybe she just fast traveled to a different part of the map. Who knows? I definitely think this is a game. The monsters are used to keeping the people inside at night, because maybe they can get out at night. Everyone we have seen come into town comes late afternoon, almost dusk. And yeah, who knows? Maybe that could potentially be, part of the reason why the monsters only come out at night. Is there some sort of doorway or exit that the townsfolk could potentially find at night that they can't find during the day? That's an interesting theory, Soph. That's a very interesting theory. I like it. And
Yeah.
yeah, most of the characters that we see arrive tend to arrive during the day or at dusk, except for Donna. We do get the story from Donna, and Donna was unfortunate enough to, well, at least according to her, Donna was unfortunate enough to arrive in Fromville when it was already dark, which of course led to the violent death of her sister. But other than that, it seems like that seems to be the only case I can think of off the top of my head of anyone arriving or saying they arrived at night. It seems like everybody else arrives when it's still light out.
Right, and Donna's arrival was also probably at a time they were probably driving around and around and around. Also, that was prior to Boyd getting there with his idea of flattening people's tires, um, whether they wanted to be flattened or not, just to force people to get the Khatri explanation. Hey, you have to get into, trust me, you don't have to believe me, but you have to trust me. And then I think that was with Boyd. Yeah, it was Khatri that jumped in front of Boyd and Abby, right? And he's like, you don't have
Yeah.
to try. And because Abby had
Yeah.
was getting her pistol out.
Yeah, Abby
And
pulls her gun right out, and Father Khatri's like, good. He's like, good, you have a gun. You can keep it trained on me the whole time, but we got to go now.
and you heard the and you're like, what was that? That's death.
Yeah, the screech is what kind of convinces them to, okay, to think, okay, maybe this guy isn't a complete nut job. I mean, you hear that screech and you instantly know that, okay, that is not an animal, that is not human, that is a weird ass freaking screech. Maybe this guy's telling the truth. Um, Will Smalls asks, I'm still wondering how the voices knew Father Khatri buried those items because he did it during the day. The voices are monsters or their overlord, because why tell her to leave the door open? And here's where I think there's more than one voice going on here. I'm not 100% sure if the voices themselves are the monsters. I get the feeling the voices are something else entirely, but I do think there's multiple voices out there that are potentially trying to influence Sarah. Um, and whatever these voices are, it seems like they were waiting a very long time for someone like Sarah to arrive in town that could hear them. It seems like they had been trying to reach out to people for a very long time, and no one could kind of tune into the right frequency to hear these voices until Sarah comes around. So I get the feeling the voices that Sarah is hearing and the monsters are two totally separate things. I don't think they're similar. I think they're two totally different groups, and I think there's multiple voices out there that Sarah is hearing, and they could potentially be either former members of the town that have died here, and for whatever reason, their souls or their spirits can't move on. And at least, at the very least, we do get a little bit of evidence of that in terms of Boyd's wife, Abby. At the end of season 1, when Sarah is hearing one of the voices communicate with her, she says to Boyd, "This one was different this time. This time it was a female." And that's how Sarah found out about Boyd's Fish and Loaves name, and that's how and the entity or the spirit, whatever one was communicating with Sarah in that point, which I do still believe it was Abby, was telling them that I was wrong about this place. There's worse things out here than the monsters. And when she says I was wrong about this place, I get the feeling that maybe she finally figured out that she was wrong, that dying here in Fromville doesn't bring you back to the real world. If she died in Fromville and is still stuck there, that would be the perfect reason to know, okay, I was wrong. Dying here doesn't bring you back to the real world because I died here and I'm still stuck here. So I do think that was potentially really Boyd's wife that did reach out to Sarah that one time, because even Sarah, the first thing she noticed was the voices were different this time. This time it was a female, indicating that every other time it's been male voices that have been influencing her and telling her to kill people. So I think there are multiple voices out there that are potentially contending for Sarah's trying to manipulate Sarah in some ways. Some are good and maybe some are bad.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you that it had to be Abby and that she used the fish and loaves, because we were introduced to the fish and loaves while they were driving in. It wasn't anything that was said in the town, because I was always led to believe, and this is based on the voice on the radio. He was, because the voice on the radio told Jim, Tabitha shouldn't be digging or something like that. So you'd think, well, is there somebody? How many people knew other than the bartender and Jim? How many people knew what Tabby was doing digging through the basement of their house? Nobody else was in there. Nobody else had access to that information. So I was thinking, well, there something was around in the daytime. Unless the entity has complete control of everything and complete awareness of everything that's going on, both inside and outside of the homes, even if they're talisman protected from the monsters. Because the voice on the radio knew that Tabby was digging. There was only a handful of people that knew that had that info. But the fish and loaves stuff, for me, that was proof positive that it was Abby, because unless by dying she became part of the hive mind, and then like everybody got access to all of her information, in which case
Which is possible,
but the thing is,
I guess.
yeah, but the thing is, man, I mean, that would be way too. I think that would be way too much power. I mean, that would be
It's
giving.
a bit much, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I
huge
feel like
attention.
sometimes the simplest answer is always the best one, Occam's razor, sometimes. And I know a show like this kind of tends to throw that narrative right out of the window for the most parts. But just based on the limited info that we did get about that interaction, I tend to think it was really Abby as well. It seems like whatever was communicating with Sarah in that point was trying to help them and wasn't telling Sarah to murder some kid. It seemed like it was probably really Abby.
Right. And we've, and again, they do such a good job of making reference and using the audience's experiences, because we've all seen the movies where somebody suddenly has a twin and you have to decide which is the good twin and which is the evil twin, and you're like, oh my gosh, well, tell me something that there's no possible way that anybody else could know, and then that's how I can believe you. And they'll tell you some ultra personal something, and something as very simple as Mr. Fish and Loaves.
Yeah.
And there was no evidence that they mentioned that at any point. Did they ever mention it out loud in the town after everybody was in the town? Did they say Fish and Loaves while he was dealing with
Boyd does mention it in that flashback episode during the day. I believe he mentions it along the lines of, that's why they called me Mr. Fish and Loaves. I know he mentions it in the car to Ellis and Abby, but we're not exactly sure where they are then, but it seems like that's before they're actually stuck in the town, because it's not till a little while later that they actually see the tree, and then Father Cautry jumps out at them.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell.
Did they mention it at all? For some reason in my mind, I've associated that with the guy that they put in the box at the very beginning. I've lost his name, Frank. When they put Frank in the box, was that part of Cautry's pep talk to Boyd when he was cleaning up Frank's parts out of the box? Was there any Fish and Loaves references that I'm not
Cautry mentioned? I don't think Cautry mentioned anything about Fish and Loaves.
Okay,
No.
okay. I was wondering if there's any way that if the entity is ever present in, because relating exactly to the question that you brought up from the chat regarding how they knew what was in the box in Cautry's satchel. That he had buried, because it was in the daytime and there was nobody else around. So
Similar to Boyd at the end of season 2, screaming, "This place won't break me!" And all of a sudden, now the cowboy monster knows exactly what he said, even though it was said during the day.
Right, and presumably out in the middle of BFE in the forest.
Exactly.
So, I think, boy, so that was a very good question by the chat, and it leads us down like yet another rabbit hole. And again, man, I just don't know. We're getting a whole lot of, and that's one thing that they've done well, is they've kind of led us in a direction. I don't know how many of them are going to turn out to be red herrings. It's just like the thing about now, like, and I almost believe it. I do, because I don't have anything to counter it. The idea that there can only be one kid at a time in there, and I have nothing. We have one data point. Megan dies and Ethan arrives. That's literally one data point, one point at which that thing happened. We haven't seen any other evidence of children. We haven't seen nothing else like that. So that leads me down that role. But there's nothing to saying that nothing in the shows is saying that.
It's just a theory at this point. Exactly. And I feel like that's really all we have to go on for a lot of these theories that we're coming up with. There's just so much we still don't know, but and that's why a lot of these theories are still very much plausible. Like this as well. You guys have killing it tonight. I'm going to catch up on the chat. You guys got some really good stuff. Something about it reminds me how in Lost the others faked being primitive when they had full surgery rooms, TV, book clubs. I feel like the monsters are very smart putting the pole in Kelly, but precisely. And that was very interesting. Yeah, it seems like the monsters specifically shoved that rebarb through Kelly's head and left her there almost as bait or almost as a way of taunting the rest of their survivors. Obviously, if they wanted to kill Kelly, they easily could have, and maybe they tried to. There's always the possibility that them sticking the rebarb through Kelly's forehead, maybe they were trying to kill her and it just happened to hit that one very weird part of the brain that kept her alive, which we have seen happen in the real world many times. I can't tell you how many times I've seen medical anomalies of people getting metal rods directly through their brain and surviving. So yeah, it's hard to know, but just looking at that scene on the surface, it looks like the monsters stuck that rebarb through Kelly's head and intentionally left her there alive as bait. But
Yeah,
again,
because then
so
they
many
had
things could
access to
happen.
her phone to play that timely song right when.
Yeah, let's play a little song and lure people over here to find this ghastly site.
But that was
Um,
to an extent was another evolution because had they left anybody alive ever prior to that,
no,
they had killed everybody immediately, and then
and that's
suddenly
what
they.
first led us to kind of believe that maybe they're changing tactics again. Maybe they're evolving again in some small way. Because up until that point, they have killed all of their victims. That was the first
Mhm.
one they left alive.
And
Although we
then
still don't know what the hell happened with Brian. We haven't seen his body anywhere. So,
exactly
but
then and then the weird story of the Brian Kelly, the guy that was named Brian Kelly that Boyd knew,
yeah,
another weird little thing, and you're like wondering again, it goes into it follows into the theory that nothing is accidental, and I know you've really expanded on it, but and I absolutely believe 100% in the idea that nobody got there accidentally, especially in regards to like Katri, especially there are a number of people.
yeah.
It seems
Jade,
as
the
though,
Matthews family,
yeah,
all of them.
each
I don't think any of them were brought there accidentally. They're brought
yeah.
here for a specific purpose.
And
Yeah,
that really lends credence to the idea that it is a game that say like
yeah.
the
Some sort
entity
of
has its.
test.
Yeah, the entity has its bad side, it has its game board set up, and the boy in white or the good guy, or if you believe the boy in white is a good guy, whatever the good side is, got to draft random civilians out of the real world, but knew their stories and knew who these people were prior to bringing them to Fromville. That's how Katri got there, based on his experiences with the little boy with the chocolate bar.
Yeah, yeah.
The Matthews family, the last opportunity that they would have been able to get the entire Matthews family together because they were getting divorced right after they finished their road trip. Just all
Hmm.
these threads and stuff, and we're wondering what is the significance. My God, we hope there's a payoff. We've been dangled these little threads, and I'm hoping each and every one of them is paid off,
Yeah, I
and
hope
gets
so.
an
I certainly
explanation.
hope so. Yeah, we definitely need to get to the road of getting some answers in season three. Let's see what we got in the chat. I'm going to try and catch up fast here. We got a lot of awesome stuff. When Tabitha starts talking, Tabitha starts talking, everybody's going to think she's crazy. Yeah, if she does mention Fromville, like wherever Tabitha is, if Tabitha is in the real world, if she mentions that she's been stuck in this weird town with no hope, with no exit, where monsters come out at night to kill you, and the only thing keeping you safe is a magical talisman you hang in the wall, yeah, people are going to throw her in a straitjacket right away. Purple Alice A says, I think the town is listened to during the day via the disconnected underground cords. But seriously, during the day, something like the crows or moles are hearing, less so at night, in my opinion. Yeah, again, I mean, even though the monsters are asleep during the day, they definitely seem to know what is happening during the day. They seem to be getting this information somehow. And yeah, maybe the crows could be it. Maybe the crows are some sort of surveillance system for the monsters. That's very, very well possible. Very well possible. 90 plus people in chat. One of them is on or works on From, listening and saying, damn, they are so close. Now, I often think about that too. Like, if I was one of the writers on From, would I want to kind of venture into the YouTube theory space and listen to some of these channels, listen to some of the theories? If I was a writer on the show, I'd probably want to have some fun and maybe kind of listen to some of the kind of fun tinfoily theories. Yeah, who knows? I guess crazier things have happened. Who knows? Julie Barber says, it'd be so interesting if someone who doesn't speak English showed up in the town and they had to try to keep them alive with that language barrier, like 1899 threw people together with multiple languages. Yeah, that would be, it would definitely present some problems for sure. I mean, imagine if someone came into the town that didn't speak English and there was nobody in the town that spoke their language. How exactly do you even convey to these people what's going on? Like, how the hell do you explain to them, hey, this is not some normal place. There's these monsters coming out at night, and you got to get inside behind one of these talismans. How the heck do you
Right.
even begin to convey that? I mean, that'd be
Yeah, that's a
tough.
little esoteric for a 101 level
It's a tough one.
language stuff. Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can say, go this way to the left or to the right, or you can say. I mean, probably the least control of English was Tian Chen, but she
Yeah,
still understood English.
she
She
understands, and she's got
said,
Kenny too. So
"Oh, that's true. Yeah, that is true. That is true."
for
Now,
translation purposes.
the dad, Bing Quan, he was a little more dependent on Kenny for
Yeah.
translation, right?
I think
Um,
I think so. Well, I mean, he communicated well enough, at least. I mean, we saw him talking with the nurse, playing chess together, often. So, I mean, I feel like he knew enough that he could at least communicate, and understood. I think his
mm,
bigger problem was the dementia.
mm, true.
Bill D says, "Why should we even believe the Melody Nurse rhyme? Because we don't know who said it to Kenny and Sarah, and it just seems misleading to help the entity in the end." And again, I think that is definitely a valid possibility. I mean, we're assuming that we hear this melody and we hear "stop the melody" and part of the nursery rhyme. So we instantly start to think, okay, maybe "stop the melody" means someone needs to destroy this music box. But what if that was the plan the entire time? What if the entity wanted Boyd to destroy that music box? I definitely think that's a possibility. And again, I mean, you guys have heard me say in the past, I don't think we've seen the last of that entity. I do think it will be around in some shape or form. I don't think it's fully gone. And yeah, who knows? Maybe destroying that music box didn't exactly thwart the entity. Maybe it only helped free it a little bit more. I think it could be possible.
Yeah, and I
Anything's
wonder.
possible at this point.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's completely dead because I mean they did. It was one thing for Kenny to have heard it in in a dream sequence, but then when like essentially Bacta kind of co-signed it, and for me at least, I kind of felt like they wanted to throw it in there. They didn't know who to give a line to, and they threw it on Bacta just to give her another line in that episode. But by doing that, they did kind of co-sign. Oh yeah, my grandmother used to tell me this exact same thing,
Yeah.
and she knew it by heart, which is like, okay, wow. So now they are kind of in a box where they've kind of co-signed it with a unrelated third party. They can't just dismiss it as purely a dream sequence event or an act of the entity because now Bacta said, "Oh no, this is long established," and at least for
Yeah.
Fromville world kind of
Hmm.
lore.
Yeah. And yeah, as Bill D says, it's definitely a possibility. I think the melody was just used by the entity to destroy the music box. We really don't know if there would have been what we if there would have actually died if the music stopped. Yeah, again, it's one of those things where maybe the whole thing was one giant setup from the entity itself, planting the nursery rhyme, all of that. But in that case, that would mean the boy in white is even more nefarious than we originally thought, because it's the boy in white who actually conveyed the nursery rhyme to Elgin. So if that is the case, Bill D, I think that would make an even bigger case for the boy in white being a little more nefarious than we thought if he had a hand in setting this whole thing up. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thought.
Can we get
John Rivera
our
says,
memberships, our gifted
"Oh
memberships?
yeah. Let me. Yeah, that's yep.
Uh,
We have two gifted memberships from Dana Marie. Thank you so much, Dana Marie, for the two gifted memberships. We got Da Stellar Napster is now a member, and Nikki is also now a member. Welcome one, welcome all. So glad to have each and every one of you here. And again, thank you so much, Dana, for the gifted memberships. You guys know what that means. A woe
mhm.
is in order.
Whoa!
I
Like,
know. I wanted
what
to get
is
those before we go into I mean, because this is,
no,
Tangent
yeah.
City. This is absolutely so fun to go down the
Yeah,
rabbit
that's
hole with
why I
you.
want to try and catch up a little bit on the chat. We got some really good stuff down there, and I'm just going to try and speed run through some of this and get to the bottom because you guys are coming with some incredibly good questions tonight. And again, this is why I really love these streams because we could just go for hours and hours talking about this stuff. I mean, it just for me, it doesn't get old. I love talking about From.
Absolutely.
What was someone threatening you because your theories are good, Robert Saunders? Oh, I certainly hope not. I certainly hope that is not the case. Last year, I got a private message saying that they knew I had inside info. I ignored it. It was crazy. LOL. Jeez. I've gotten some I've gotten some weird messages in my time as a YouTuber, both from related and other shows related. I've got some weird messages before, but that one takes the cake a little bit there, Robert. Man, it's sorry that happened, my friend. I am sorry that happened. It's
Yeah.
very
No,
strange.
stop talking about what you're talking about if you know it's good for you.
If you
It's
know
like,
it's good for you, you won't bring up that theory again.
good grief.
Jeez, sorry, man. That's very strange. Very
Wow.
strange.
But
And yes,
like,
someone was bringing up. Here it is. You said Massachusetts. Where from? I'm from Southbridge. Oh wow, that's what's up. Welcome, John Rivera. So glad to have you, my friend. Yes, I grew up in Boston, and now I live around 45 minutes outside of Boston. But yeah, I am Massachusetts born and bred. And so glad to see the Boston Celtics making it to the NBA Finals this year. Hell yes. But that's a discussion
he
for
lives at
another time.
1112 51st. Yeah, 1112 51st Street. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to tell you.
There it is. So you think the voices are similar to Lost Whisperers, previous residents, but some are trying to help, but others are angry. I definitely think it's very similar to that. Yes, we did get that reveal at the very end of Lost, and it's funny how that reveal in Lost came from Harold Perrineau's character, Michael, in Lost. It was Michael who died on the island who reveals himself to Hurley and tells him that that's what these voices are. They're the ones that can't move on, that have died here. And I do think some of the voices that Sarah was hearing were similar cases. I think some of them are former residents of the town that have died there and for whatever reason just can't move on. I do think that's part of it. Again, I really think that was really Abby that was communicating with Sarah that one time, and just off the dialogue alone, that entity, whatever that entity was, if it was Abby, which I do think it was, it said, "Tell Boyd I was wrong about this place. There's worse things out here than the monsters." And if Abby is admitting that she was wrong, that leads me to believe that she means she was wrong about dying in here. Brings you home to the real world. That you have to die in Fromville in order to escape. I think Abby died in Fromville and realized, holy crap, that doesn't get you home. I died here and I'm still stuck here. So I definitely think some of these voices that are manipulating Sarah were some kind of residents of the town that have died there and for whatever reason just can't move on. I don't believe anything Ted Abby says. I think they are using her image / voice to get to Boyd. Every time we see Abby, I don't think that was Abby at all. I think the only time that it was actually legitimately Abby was the one time that Sarah hears the voice at the end of season 1. Every other time that we see Abby appear, I don't think that's Abby at all. I definitely think that was the entity manipulating Boyd. It had to be the entity manipulating Boyd. There's no way it was really Tabby appearing to Boyd. The only time I think it was legitimately Abby was with the Sarah situation.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
that's just me.
Yeah, her appearance in the RV, her appearance down
Yeah,
in the Martin cave. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
I think that was more the entity manipulating Boyd into doing some course of action, either manipulating Boyd into not destroying the music box, or manipulating Boyd into destroying the music box and acting like that's not what it wants. Again, something about destroying that music box. It was just a little too easy. It was a little too simple to stop all of this. You destroy one little music box and all of this stops. just seems like it's a little too easy that the entity was thwarted a little too easily. So I get the feeling there's some other twist that is going to be going on there. I don't think we have seen the rest of the last of the entity. And yes,
Yeah.
what about the dead Abby in the spider web? That was around the time Abby was speaking to Sarah. Yeah, the dead Abby in the spider web, that's another huge question mark. And again, I mean, it could potentially just be the forest getting into Boyd's mind, trying to play tricks on him. But then again, who knows? It could be something totally else entirely. And obviously, Boyd sees Abby before he even gets bit. So it's certainly not the spider bites making him hallucinate, because obviously he sees her before he even gets bit. So yeah, that's another big question mark. What exactly was that weird kind of Abby in the spider web? Was it just the forest trying to manipulate Boyd, trying to scare him? Was it a fear tactic? Was it a way to trip Boyd up so he would get bit by the spiders? Big question mark there. I always forget about that Abby and these spider webs. Thank you for bringing that up, Leah Bradley. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I tend to forget about that scene sometimes, but yeah, that's one thing that we have no explanation for. It certainly doesn't seem like it was the entity, because at that point the entity was still trapped inside Martin, so it wasn't the same entity that we saw appear as Abby in season 2. So exactly what was that appeared to Boyd in the spider webs? Again, was it simply just the forest manipulating him, or was there something else going on there? That's a good point.
Right. And Sarah didn't see it, right? She saw
Nope.
Boyd react to
Yep.
it, but didn't
Yep.
see the actual vision. I tell you what, man, some of
Because
the
she asked Boyd, "What did you see?" and Boyd doesn't tell her.
right, okay. Man, that's something that they need to get back to. For some reason, of course, going down rabbit holes and going off on tangents and stuff. That dream sequence where when Smiley was dead in the after the autopsy, that Mari had regarding, and then Boyd was in it as well. They need to get back to that. It was a very simple jump scare, but there was so much dread
It was so
and
good
so
though.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a great scene, and I wish there was so much more of that in so much tension and so much just dread involved in that scene. And they really didn't. That whole season they really didn't touch. They didn't scratch the surface like they did in that scene very many times. And a show like this,
It got
for
back to
being
its horror roots in that scene, like
yes,
season 1 horror
exactly.
roots.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
really went down the Cicada. They really went down the mystery box, like trying to make us more intrigued. And again, and that's why I think the writing kind of fumbled in season 2. And that's why I'm kind of hoping that there actually is a resolution, that a lot of this stuff that we were talking about earlier, I hope they do resolve it in season 3. I hope there was actually a reason, because it felt like and I've used this analogy many times recently, but it felt like the writers kind of ran out of runway. They were leading up to something. They wanted the audience to feel something about the cicadas and about the entity trying to break through, and trying to give us this dread and this fear, where it was really encapsulated in this scene. And granted, it was a very basic jump scare, but it was super cool, like in the lead up to it, when Mari was talking to Boyd, and when she had just woken up, and it was resolved super quick, but it was very, very satisfying. It got your adrenaline going. They did the long story about what the cicadas, and again, like I said, towards the beginning of the episode, the stuff about what was her name? Paula. When Paula was dead, that led Boyd to immediately say, "Oh, it comes at you when you're asleep. So now nobody gets to go to sleep." That was kind of a weird jump too. Go tell everybody at Colony House, don't go to sleep. Nobody gets to go to sleep. I don't know if he put 2 and 2 together. Had he talked to Ellis yet at that point, where Ellis had drowned in his sleep, or woke up spitting up water?
Victor?
No, Boyd. What would have led Boyd to tell everybody, to send somebody up to Colony House to say, "Don't let anybody go to sleep"? Yeah.
Oh, what happened to what's her name at the in Sarah's house? The people that moved into Sarah's house, that lady,
Paula and Reggie,
that got kind of just whatever happened to her in her sleep. That's what led Boyd to tell everybody to not go to sleep.
but they're just that was kind of a wild, like a kind of a wild jump, right? Like it happened to her while she was sleeping, so therefore don't let anybody go to sleep at all. And then everybody went
Well, I
into
think it was
that's
that. I don't think that was the only thing. I think it was that compounded with everything else that was happening with the quote unquote dreams. Like Boyd had just gone up to Kenny an episode before that, and Kenny told him about the dream he had about the cicada and how he woke up with the burn still on his arm and all that.
oh,
So I
okay.
think Boyd was just. I think at that point there were enough clues pointing to dreams not being safe that he just wanted to play it safe and say nobody fall
Okay.
asleep.
So had he talked to was it Donna? He had talked to Donna about Elgin waking up with water in his mouth.
Yes, at that
Okay, that
point
would
he
have been
would have already have talked to Elgin. Yeah,
okay. I
because
think
when
yeah.
he finds Sarah combusted, that's in the second to last episode in season 2. So at that point, yeah, he would have already have talked to Elgin about his dream as well, about
Okay,
being pushed
okay.
down in the tub.
Okay, and I think they probably, and like we said at the very, very beginning of the episode, I think they would have benefited by having more than one day because we saw that in the episode description, like how everyone, and that's how I knew that that was what the writers were
Everyone
going for.
prepares for the end. Yeah,
Yeah,
the description made it seem like there was this kind of impending apocalypse on its way, and
yeah,
the actual events didn't really land that hard. And maybe they intended it to land a little bit harder, and I think
right,
it could
right,
have
right.
if they wanted to create this feeling of this impending apocalypse coming that nobody can fall asleep or we're all going to die. They probably should have had what happened to Paula happen to multiple people. Then it probably would have created a bigger sense of urgency. But yes,
Right,
the
right, right.
description made it seem like there's this impending doom that everybody in the town is preparing for the end, and it didn't really quite play out that way in the actual episode. The description didn't really fit the episode too much, I
Yeah,
guess.
they did a quick scroll through Colony House and Tilly had her prayer circle. Like everybody was coping in one way or another with the idea. Reggie, of course, was freaking out, which led him to do what he did. With
Mm,
Matthias and everything. But yeah, not enough time. There wasn't enough time with that weight over them, that dread, and we didn't see people like suffering trying to stay awake, like nodding off and somebody slapping them and like shaking them away, none of that really happened. And I think
yeah.
that by that time they'd run 8 episodes, 9 episodes, and they just didn't have enough time. I
Mhm.
mean, to be fair, the one thing that they did well is they left us with a metric shit ton of I mean, I don't even want to call it cliffhangers. It was just like unresolved loose ends. So we have to know
Mm,
what happens to Jade. We have to know what happens to Tabby. We have to know what happens to Boyd in the forest. We have to know what happens, with Mari, Randall, and Julie. There's a lot of things that they can jump into in at the
yeah.
beginning of season
Yeah.
3. But yeah, so I guess that we did
Mhm.
get. I don't know. Do we call that cliffhangers or do we call that just
Yeah,
unresolved
I would
plot lines?
classify them as I would classify them as cliffhangers. I feel like I mean, being that it was the season finale, and although we didn't really get as many answers as we were hoping for, especially where Jade's story was concerned, yeah, I would classify them as quote unquote cliffhangers, Tabitha and Jade and Boyd, to some extent. But Will Small saw a Reddit post about signage on building the hotel, the clinic not making sense, like an alien who's seen school on TV but doesn't know what it really is. Interesting. I'll have to go back and actually check that out when they actually show it. Some of the signage on the hotel and the clinic not making sense. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I'll look out for some of the signages. I'd have to look for the old Reddit post, but someone had a good idea when it said it was a town name and then elementary school, but I don't recall what they suggested off the top of my head. Yeah, there's just so many good theories. I mean, in terms of just incredible fan theories that are surrounding this show, I haven't seen a collective fan base be this clever and throw this much thought into something since Lost was on. Well, it has been since Lost that I've seen this level of dissection going into every single From episode. Again, it really does harken back and reminds me a lot of the old Lost days when Lost was on, where so many people were diving into. Obviously, Social media wasn't back then when Lost was on. Social media wasn't like it is now. There wasn't Facebook and stuff like that. So all you really had was message boards, really. But
Mm.
that's one thing I remember: so many people just running to message boards every single time a new episode of Lost would come on, and just throwing out some awesome theories. And again, I haven't really seen it. I haven't really seen a show or a fandom surrounding a show go that deep into anything since From came around. So it's so awesome to see. There's just so many ways, so many things to theorize about this show that it just doesn't get old. You can go in so many different directions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I posted the Discord link. I'll post it again in here. Didn't put a title on it or anything, but that is our Fromville Discord. The Ice and Fire
Yeah, join
Discord
the
that covers
Discord.
all the shows that we talk about. If you want to talk about the show and theorize, it's very welcoming. We know a lot of people are just now discovering From and have a lot of the same questions that we had in episode 1,
More the
episode
merrier.
2. And
Man.
yeah, it's very welcoming. If you have a theory, nobody gets ridiculed. It's you throw it out there, see if it sticks. A lot of people have thought about a lot of different things in there, so absolutely more than welcome. Jump in the Discord, and we'll be talking about House of the Dragon here coming up very shortly,
Absolutely.
as well. Tons and tons of activity in the Discord for the times in between the live streams. So
Indeed. Indeed. Always something fun happening in the Discord. And yes, Lost and Heroes as well. It's season 1 of Heroes. Yeah, I do remember that, Doc Hayes. We did have kind of a similar level of kind of fan theorizing when Hero season 1 was on as well. Man, Heroes was so good during
oh
season
man,
1.
save the cheerleader. It was just so
Save the cheerleader, save
it,
the world. It was so good, man.
it was what we needed at the time too. I think there's something about
Yeah.
it. I don't know. This is
And then
long
the
before the
writer's strike
Marvel
ruined it.
universe, right? Yeah,
Yeah. And it's
very
funny
good
too
point.
because we have all these years later, the writer's strike very much impacted and delayed the production of From season 3. But prior to this, the last time we got a writers and actors strike was during when Heroes was on, and unfortunately, Heroes suffered immensely because of it. The replacement writers that they brought in to finish Heroes, unfortunately, just did not have a sense of where to take that narrative. Seasons 2 and 3 are almost like a completely different show compared to season 1 of Heroes.
Yeah.
Tyler says Paula dying is odd as well in Sarah's house. She doesn't seem that important, so why take her out? I think that was more of just, not who we're going to kill, but just make sure we kill someone to create that fear within town. Obviously, to us, to the show, and to the audience, Paula isn't really an important character. She's kind of just an extra at this point, really, maybe a small step above an extra. But I think her dying in the manner that she died in was the purpose. I don't think it was so much who died, but how they died, to try and create that panic within the town.
Yeah, and she was such a bitch to Sarah when Sarah
And
went
she
there
was
to get
such
the
a bitch
splitter.
to Sarah. Shit.
Nobody
Like,
was really crying for Paul.
I was not crying tears for Paula, I must say. I was not shedding any tears. That dream sequence makes me believe that the trailer for season 3 is a dream. All in, Boyd was too comfy with the monsters. Yeah, that has been a pretty interesting idea as well, that potentially everything that we saw in the season 3 trailer, or at least the barn scene, could potentially be a dream. The only thing that leads me to believe that it's real and that it isn't a dream is the scene that we get the next morning. And it looks like we see all the blood on Boyd's clothes. But not only do we see the blood on Boyd's clothes, but we also see what looks to be the same 3 claw marks in his shoulder. And in the barn scene, it looks like Boyd does get clawed up by one of the monsters at some point. And then when we see him walking the next day, or what might be the next day when he and Jade are carrying the cart, we see that Boyd still has the same mark on his shoulder. We can see it a little bit here, his bloody shoulder where he got clawed from the monsters. But we can also see it a little bit closer here, excuse me. Here we can see a little bit of the rip in his shirt and the blood. Here we can see it even better, where you can kind of almost clearly see the claw marks, the rip, and the blood. And of course, if we go to the actual barn scene, we see right here, this is right after Boyd gets clawed. Now, obviously, we don't see any blood in here, but I think that's just simply because this is literally right when he gets clawed. Because when we see the next frame, there's blood coming from his shoulder already. So I think he gets clawed, the frame changes, and then when it pans back to him, there's blood already coming out of the wound. So that was the only thing that led me to believe that it's probably not a dream, just because he's got the same wound on his shoulder the next morning when he's walking down the street, as opposed to when he is in the barn.
Yeah, and
So that
all
was the
that
only thing
blood
that
on
kind
his
of,
front. Yeah, all that blood on
yeah,
his front reminded me, I mean, almost exactly like what looked like when he was putting Frank's parts in a barrel, clean up
yeah,
Frank's parts after he got torn apart. So yeah, other than the part, yeah, the scratch that you're talking about, I think you're dead on exactly right with that. The first one
yeah.
where there
If
was
we
no
didn't
blood
see that, yeah,
was
if we didn't see
yeah,
that scratch, I would definitely be a little bit more inclined to think that it could potentially be one big dream sequence. But seeing the claw mark in the barn and then seeing the aftermath of the claw mark when he's in the street, which is presumably the next day, I think this is a real scene. I do think this really happens. And again, I think the entire scene is orchestrated to break Boyd. One of the big questions why a lot of people thought that it could potentially be a dream is if it's real, how exactly is Boyd still alive? Why didn't the monsters kill him? And I get the feeling there's two answers here. Either Boyd ends up escaping somehow, or they don't want to kill him. And I get the feeling it could potentially be that they don't want to kill him. It seems like that scene is at least they don't want to kill him in that moment. It seems like that scene is specifically designed to break Boyd, not to kill him. We even hear the dialogue from the monsters is kind of telling in that regard as well, where we hear the monster say to Boyd, "You said this place couldn't break you. That's what you said. Let's see." So it
yeah.
almost seems like that entire scene is one big test to see if they can break Boyd by doing something heinous to someone that he cares about in front of him.
Yeah, and I am 100. I mean, just listening to the intro, the little clip of the trailer in our intro today, every fiber of my being hears Sarah. I don't hear Fatima. I don't hear Julie. I hear Sarah
I
in
hear
in that
Sarah the
in that
most.
screaming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
so
because we've heard her scream so many times in so many other episodes, and it does kind of hit a similar kind of sound. So I just based off the sound alone, I tend to
mhm,
think Sarah is probably the best candidate. I just really love the Fatima theory of her
mm,
potentially being forced to give birth, in front of under monster captivity, and the monsters maybe
right.
stealing the baby for some reason. I know
Yeah.
that's probably not what's going on, but I love that freaking theory. It's
Okay.
such a
But
good
again, I
theory.
mean, also bear in mind there is nothing anchoring that scream to anything that's happening in the barn. That scream could be an entirely
Exactly.
different episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, these trailers really know how to, screw with us and throw us off and make something seem like one thing is going on, but really something else is happening entirely. Maybe that dialogue, maybe that audio of the scream is from a different scene entirely, and they just kind of plastered it on there to make it seem like that's what was going on. That's a possibility as well. I saw a lot of people bringing that up, and I think again, it could be true. Who knows?
We saw it in
And
Shogun a couple weeks ago. It was not that far in the past, and those make for good trailers when you divorce
yep,
the audio and even lines of dialogue from the scenes in which, and sometimes they'll even show the same scene, but they'll just show the dialogue out of place within that same scene that they're showing
yeah,
within the trailer.
out of
So
sequence. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's another thing. A lot of these scenes are purposely, when it comes to trailers, they're purposely edited and cut together, purposely out of sequence to make it seem like one scene is happening one way when really it's happening in a totally different order when the actual episode comes around.
hmm
And I 100% agree with this as well, Robert Saunders. I take some notes every once in a while. Usually I take notes when I'm watching the actual episode. It's hard to take notes while I'm streaming, but I definitely always take many mental notes in terms of all of the awesome theories and thoughts that you guys give to us every time we go live or put out a video. So I agree with this. Robert Saunders says, "I know this will sound crazy, but I take notes during these live chats because there are so many good points. I actually go back and research some of them. Sounds nuts when I say this. I don't think it's nuts at all, man. And I think that's just the level of commitment a lot of us have to this show. We're so invested in this show and the mysteries that it's setting up and the awesome characters that are being developed in the world that it's set in. I mean, there's a reason why we're so invested in all of this stuff, because I feel like a lot of us here, at least the From fans, we like a lot of the same things. We look for some of these similar story points and themes in TV shows. And when we find a show like From, for me anyway, I go head first into it, like 100% invested into a show like this. So, no, me personally, I don't think that sounds nuts, even in the slightest, Robert, because it's just that kind of show.
No, absolutely, and I absolutely agree, and I think the strike was painful because for me going back to this, I take notes when I'm watching that. I'll take like notes of exactly what happened in the scenes. I know you do because you take like screenshots of scene after scene, and it's like, okay, this is Boyd and Jade scene, okay, this is Sarah and such scene, and then you go through and watch it again and find out, and then I'll do a third pass and I'll be like, okay, what are the writers trying to convey here? What emotions are they trying to bring out? What is the purpose of this scene? Because that's one thing that we find with these shows that have tons of moving parts and lots of characters. You'll find, okay, there's 2 people in this scene, there's 3 people in this scene. What was the purpose of putting this scene with these people here at this point in the show? How does it progress? What information was conveyed in this scene that pushes the story along? What did we need to know, or what did we need to see these characters experience that moved the plot along in relation to all the other ones? Because we are the show is at its best when we were experiencing it at the same rate as the characters, like Megan, like Boyd finding out that Frank had done that. We were finding out at the same time as the characters. When we know everything that's going on, it takes us kind of, we've got the bird's eye view. We see everybody, and it takes us kind of out of it when we're the first hand, when we're in the scene and we have that peril, we have that dread, when we're in the truck, when we're in the van with Elgin and trying to get Ellis into town, and we're driving through those scrubby trees and stuff. It's like, oh shit, is he gonna run off the road? Is he gonna run into a tree and stop the truck, and then the monsters get him? That is when this show shines, is when we are
That's when it's at its
experiencing
best.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely, 100%. And that scene in particular, the way that they shot that scene of Ellis driving Elgin to the clinic, like you said, not only is it incredibly dark and scary with the road itself and all the trees and not knowing if they're going to crash into something, but I have got to give immense props to the cameraman who actually filmed that scene, who actually physically, because the way they filmed that scene is they had one cameraman physically get into the van with Fatima, Ellis, and Elgin and film it all right from that first person POV. So whoever filmed that scene, the cameraman that was operating that camera in that scene, top notch, just top notch filming in that scene. It was really great. So I just wanted to kind of give that person props, whoever they may be.
Yeah, and the cinematographer who came up with the idea of doing that. It was something that show direly needed at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a good idea. And again, it brought back some of those season 1 feelings of that just pure old adrenaline-filled horror feeling, which season 1 was so known for. Obviously, season 2 kind of goes off a little bit into more of the mystical, almost fantasy realm in some cases with the entity. But this show is at its best when it's a horror show at the end of the day, at least in my opinion. I feel like the show is at its best when it's really focusing on its horror roots. And hopefully we get a little bit more about that in season 3, because I'm hoping the monsters are coming back in a big way. Peter says, this show is like diamond in the dirt, not trying to undermine other shows, but there are only few shows that are intriguing as this one. No, I 100% agree. There's so many great shows out there. I don't want to take anything away from all of the great casts and crews out there that are doing amazing work on a lot of other shows that I genuinely really like. But this show, it's almost in another tier entirely in terms of being the perfect kind of show to build a great fandom like this around it, where it does kind of require that extra level of attention to detail to really try and put these puzzle pieces together. It's a show unlike any other show that is currently on TV right now. That much I can say. And again, I don't want to undermine other shows out there because I love tons of other shows, but this show is special in a way that really no other show is. And yeah, but we're all a little crazy in this community. Abso-freaking-lutely. And that's what makes these streams and that's what makes this show so fun because we are. You know, we get here usually every Tuesday and Friday night. I try to do a Fromville Hour stream, and it's really the highlights of my weeks lately because, again, I love hanging out with all of you crazy people in the chat, diving into all of these rabbit holes. It's a blast, and you guys make it a blast. If it wasn't for you guys, there'd be no fandom. So I'm super thankful to everybody who comes out and hangs out with us every week. You guys really are the best. Best fandom. Let's see what else we got. The trailer for the van ride with Ellis, Elgin, and Fatima was great too. Yeah, I mean it's just such good filming, wasn't it? Just the camera angles, the speed, everything that was happening in that scene. It was just beautifully shot, beautifully filmed, and beautifully acted as well. That's one thing that kind of sticks out in my memory was how well Ellis's actor, the actor who played Ellis. How well he was kind of conveying just being in that immense amount of pain after being stabbed and not wondering if he was going to live or die. The actor played it so beautifully in that scene.
Yeah, and that was actually the first time Elgin was actually useful because he was kind of a lump. I mean, you know, we get told,
little bit.
you know, it wasn't like they say, you know, show don't tell, but we were basically just told, oh, this guy is important. Okay, but I don't care about him. I don't care one little bit about him. For having him step up, and and then
he stepped up
to be the
definitely.
driver, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe there is something to this guy other than just having it announced to us that he's important. And going back to the one that Purple Alizé mentioned about the scene, the van scene reminding her of Last of Us. That was, I think, the best scene in all of Last of Us, which was the very first scene of Last of Us when they were driving in the pickup, driving through the world in the very, very first scene of the very first. Not the very first scene, very first episode.
Yeah, when they pick Ellis up to go help rescue the Matthews family.
On Last of Us, the
first scene in the first episode of the first scene.
No, the Elgin driving Ellis into the clinic.
Yeah,
that reminded her and me of when the Last of Us scene when they're driving the pickup.
Oh, yes, it definitely reminds you of The Last of Us. Almost an exact same camera angle. I wouldn't even be too surprised if the camera angle in The Last of Us was some sort of inspiration for the camera angle that we saw in From. So yeah, now that you guys mention it, super similar filming styles and angles.
And the peril, the immediacy of the action, and like, oh my gosh,
the sense of urgency.
It's like, oh shit, there's a roadblock, we got to turn, that kind of stuff, all that stuff. When we're experiencing it at the same time as the characters, man, that's when these shows, especially shows that are horror based or intense, adrenaline based shows, that's when they really, really shine. So yeah, I agree 100%. Purple Alizé.
Yeah, 100% agree with you guys. It's very, very similar, the two. Indeed. Let's see what we got. I hope it's not just a dream. Faking us out with a trailer is a cheap trick. The cicadas appeared in the trailer, but that was a shot from season 2 that they reused. I think the cicadas will be gone. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, even I myself, when I first saw that cicada shot, I thought, holy crap, the cicadas are back. And then you take a closer look, and yes, you realize that that's just a reuse shot from season 2, just like how we see the doll in the season 3 trailer as well, but it turns out it's the exact same shot that we saw the doll the first time in season 2. So yeah, they did reuse some scenes there for the season 3 trailer. Am I the only one who finds it out? It takes 3 of the monsters to hold back Boyd. They smash through walls. Maybe Boyd is getting stronger. Ooh, interesting. yeah, we do see all three of the monsters are kind of holding him back in order to trust him up to this beam here. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it does seem what we've seen in the past. It seems like the monsters do have almost a superhuman level of strength. They bursted right through the box to get to Frank. It seems like they're pretty strong. So yeah, why does it take three of them to hold Boyd back? I don't know. It's a good question though. That's a good question though. I like it. Boyd also got cut by Martin and shot wearing that shirt in the season 2 finale. That damage is not seen in the shirt either. Where did the damage go? He only has the one shirt. That's the thing. I don't think he has only the one shirt. I get the feeling he's got multiple shirts like that because, we see Boyd wearing a very similar shirt at the end of season 2 when he gets shot, like you said. But then in the barn trailer, the shirt is completely clean. It doesn't even have a bullet mark in it or anything. So I get the feeling it's just two totally different shirts. They're very similar in color, but I do think they're different shirts. I mean, they have to be. I imagine they have to be at the end of the day. So Boyd is the first human we've seen injured by a monster and survives. Curious to see how his body reacts. Ooh, that's a very interesting point, Emily. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I can't think of any other character that gets physically scratched or hurt by one of the monsters that ends up living. The only one that I can think of that they even left alive for a little bit is
Kelly.
What's her name? Kelly, who got the rebarb through her head, but she didn't get scratched. But that was the only person that the monsters have ever left alive. Everyone up until that point, anyone who's ever gotten injured by one of the monsters tends to get killed by them as well. So that's a good point. Could Boyd getting scratched by one of these monsters and survive, could it have some sort of adverse affections? And that's definitely a great question to ask not only you, Ravener, but the chat as well. What do you guys think? Do you guys think there are going to be potentially some adverse reactions to Boyd getting clawed by one of the monsters and surviving? What do you think?
Ooh, now that is a tough one. That ties into a lot of that for me ties into like the fast healing, Ellis's fast healing. Now, granted, none of his injuries were monster related. He jumped off the roof one time, and then he got stabbed by Dale the one time. Boyd, we know he has fast healing because not even his pre-Parkinson's started going in a way. After
Parkinson's disappeared after he got the worms, at least.
Yeah. But then that was also related to the spider bites that he got as well. So
it could have been, it could have been the spider bites that healed it.
I'm wondering though, that is going to be, and we know that for some reason Jim is out of favor because Jim's injury, like Ethan's injury, healed hella quick, and Jim's injury isn't really. I don't know if people. I don't know if that's just.
Well, Jim's injury was way more minor too. Like Ethan got a whole freaking chair leg impaled through him. Ellis gets stabbed with like a 7-inch knife. All Jim did was like tweak his knee a little bit, and he spent the entirety of season 2 limping around the freaking town. So yeah, Jim was not healing fast like some of the other characters.
Yeah, and we wonder if there's a reason for that, if there's a plot line reason, if there's something that the writers are going to explain to us later, in maybe even in season 3, about who gets chosen to heal fast and who doesn't. I didn't really think. I mean, I always think of things being transferred, even like now we go from vampire rules to werewolf rules. Do you need to be bitten to transform or to have some effect? Can a scratch be the same? I know there are precedents in other horror shows where merely a scratch, something, merely the touch can transfer whatever evil
Zombies.
or curse or whatever. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how that does play out. Does it get infected? Does it get super infected super fast? Does it heal up? I mean, or on the other side, does it heal up almost instantly? We still don't know if Boyd is completely free of the worms. Do the worms inside of him have some effect positive
Yeah,
or
are the
negative.
worms gone? Are the worms
Yeah.
completely gone? And if they are completely gone, like you said, did they leave some sort of adverse effects within him, or maybe some kind of positive effects? We're still not 100% sure what the status of Boyd's Parkinson's is. He
Mhm.
gets the worms originally from Martin, and Boyd instantly says to when Father Cautry appears to him, my hand's no longer shaking, but now I got these worms crawling under my skin. So just from that line alone, we kind of get the sense that once Boyd got the worms from Martin, it could have potentially healed his Parkinson's, or maybe it was even the spider bites, because they kind of happen very close to one another.
Yeah.
But now
I
that the spider bites have healed, now that the worms are completely gone, what exactly is the status of Boyd's Parkinson's? Is it going to come back, or is it just gone for good?
Right. And that's one thing that they have to tell us, and that's one thing that keeps all of our theories up in the air, where we pretty much go, well, we can't really know because we haven't been told anything. And that is 100% on the writers. They have to tell us the rules. We have to know the rules of the world that the characters
Mhm.
inhabit, if we're going to make guesses that make sense. Otherwise, we are
Yeah.
just saying, well, it could be. And for me, you know how I am about theories and stuff. I'm like, if we don't know it, I mean, we can theorize, to infinity, and after a point, it just becomes fanfic. It just becomes us writing our own
Mhm.
fiction, because we
Yeah.
don't know anything. And uh, they are at a point, I think, by season 3, we do need to get some hard and fast rules about the world in which the characters that we care about so much, we need the rules about the world that they inhabit.
Mhm.
And that is,
Well,
we need to know about, are the monsters, do they turn to powder if they're hit by sunlight? Is sunlight, that powerful, or are they just simply nocturnal? We need to know this hard and fast. We have small data points, but we don't have anything. Everything else is just conjecture, and we have gone a long way as far as theorizing. I mean, the guys in the Discord, the guys in the chat, we all have theories, but all of it is based on such flimsy, minor, uh circumstantial evidence. I just wish that I mean, this is the point at which, like, the smart, in a horror movie, the smart nerd would either be an expert on, ancient Mesopotamian deities, or they'll find a journal, a diary or something of somebody who, and it's just basically one long exposition dump that tells us exactly what world we live in.
yeah.
So
Well, in terms of them conveying important things, in season 1 and season 2, they definitely spent a decent amount of time setting up the narrative of Boyd's Parkinson's. So it seems to be an important part of his character nonetheless. So if they do spend that much time, hammering home to the audience that Boyd's Parkinson's is a part of his character, then something like that needs to continuously be a part of his storyline. So, yes, they do kind of need to answer at some point whether or not the Parkinson's is gone for good, or if it's returned now that the worms are gone. Because again, they've made the Parkinson's such a big part of Boyd's story that they have
mhm.
to kind of follow through on that. And I'm right with you as well, where I hope that now that season 3 is here, that we start to get some of these smaller answers kind of nailed down. The rules are made a little bit clearer to us in terms of how things work, what can happen, what can't happen. I'm totally cool with the first 2 seasons being all mystery. I didn't really mind that too much. I know others did. I know not everybody loves getting no answers.
Mm.
I was totally cool with it, because I knew that this was definitely setting up a long running mystery that was going to be told over multiple seasons, hopefully. So the first 2 seasons, I didn't really mind there being a ton of mystery and not much answers. But now that we're getting into season 3 territory and beyond, yeah, you would hope at least that we start to get some small answers, that some small things start to come full circle. Small things like what exactly was dragging the tent at the end of season 1, where Boyd and Sarah got dragged. What was dragging the tent and why? Little
Mhm.
things like that. What voice was on the other end of the radio? There's smaller mysteries out there that they could potentially answer that wouldn't necessarily solve the greater mysteries as a whole. So yeah, going into season 3, I really am hoping we start to get some of these smaller questions figured out.
Yeah. And of course, a huge part of the frustration is, the strike gave us a whole year to sit here and ruminate about stuff that we never got answers for. If it had gone at a regular schedule where these seasons had been banged out, bang, 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 1, 2, 3, I don't think there would be, at least for me personally, there wouldn't have been nearly as much frustration. For me, I mean, I feel like we're just treading over familiar territory, and that's because we had a whole year to sit and ruminate about it. And it's not our fault, and it's not the writer's fault. It's just the situation, the same way that you can't fault people for, the things that happened during COVID and stuff. If everything's shut down, it's nobody's fault that there was no progress made. But yeah, I really do hope that, and I have every bit of confidence. I don't care if it goes 5 seasons. I know we've talked as much as 7 to really flesh out the entirety of this story. But at least, no matter what happens in season 3, no matter how much gets answered or doesn't get answered, at least we know that we're going to have a regular release schedule after that, barring another, unforeseen
year and a half in between seasons 3 and 4, hopefully. And I do get the feeling it probably will get renewed and picked up for a 4th season. The fandom only seems to be growing in numbers. So I get the feeling, I mean, it was a little while until we got official confirmation that they were even going to do a 2nd season. I remember I was waiting with bated breath, hoping and praying that the show would get a season 2, because when season 1 aired, it wasn't even on MGM Plus. MGM Plus was Epix at that point, and Epix was one of the smallest streaming services at the time. Not a lot of people heard of it. So it was a show that not many people knew even existed. But now that the show has been reaching multiple platforms like Amazon Prime, now Netflix in the UK, I get the feeling that the show will most likely be renewed for as many seasons as they need to tell the story properly. At least that's
I definitely hope so. And you guys in the chat, I mean, this show, among out of all the shows that we've done on this channel, this is one of the more easy recommendations. Almost everybody, if you recommend it to a family member, a friend,
everybody, literally everybody. If anyone ever asks me, "Oh, what's a good show to watch?" It's always From is the first suggestion.
First answer, and I think I've heard of one person ever out of probably literally dozens that just secondhand they said, "Oh yeah, I recommended it." And sometimes people get the person that our chat member recommends it to gets more into it than the chat member does. It's like, "Oh, I told my mom, and now my mom can't get enough of it, and she wants to know." And she's watching the live stream. She wants the answers to this question. She wants the answers to that question. Yeah, man, that's how it works. Spread the word, and especially because we're coming out of a year and a half of idleness. A lot of the heat, a lot of the momentum that they had with season 2, regardless of how good somebody thinks season 2 is. A lot of that just petered away just by neglect, because it was out of the conversation. Man, guys, put this back in the conversation during the season. Yeah,
I think it's getting there. I mean, now that we got this 30-second teaser, it seems like it has kind of breathed a little bit of new life into the From fandom as a whole. And as we get a little bit closer to fall, and once we get a little bit closer to whatever the exact date that it's going to be airing on is, I was a little worried at first. I was a little bit worried at first that the show might not be able to capture that same momentum that it had coming out of season 2. But at this point, I am very convinced that once season 3 actually gets a little bit closer, that it's going to be even crazier than season 2 was. I feel like the momentum will come right back. But that's just me. I mean, the strike definitely hurt it, though. There's no debating that. I feel like the strike, the extended delay of the show, definitely affected momentum coming out of season 2, because it was on a roll. It had so much momentum when season 2 ended. This was the show on everybody's tongue. Everybody was saying, this is the show. This is the diamond in the rough. This is the show that you should be watching. The show that nobody knows about, that everybody should be watching.
That was the heartbreakers, because it would like every list of top 10 shows you're not watching but you should be. It's like, no, don't not be watching it. You should be watching it.
It just needs to be the list of top 10 shows, period. That's it. That's where we need to get to. John says, quick question. Did the worms turn into those flying insects? Where did those flying insects come from after they opened Smiley's body? So I'm guessing the worms. It seems like after they did the autopsy with Smiley, it seems like the cicadas started to originate from there. It gets a little bit fuzzy, though, especially when you realize that only certain people could see the cicadas. Not everybody could see them. We see when Julie is getting overtaken by the cicadas, same thing as Mari. Both when the cicadas are overtaking them and they're getting possessed by them, Christy couldn't actually see the cicadas on Mari, and neither could Tabitha as well when Julie was being overtaken. So it gets a little bit fuzzy when you think about those cicadas when they were possessing someone. But the cicadas that came directly from Smiley's body, yes, it seems like Boyd and Kenny both were able to see those. So I get the feeling they did come from the worms that were in Smiley's body. It seems like it all originates from the worms.
Oh,
But it
okay.
just gets a little fuzzy later on. But I do think they came from Smiley, though.
Then they also made that they threw out a little, I don't even, not an Easter egg, a teaser about how, like Sarah mentioning that Nathan hated cicadas. So there's some
Yes,
idea that the forest
your
or that
fears.
Fromville can manifest, yeah, somebody. But this is so weird
Yes.
because Nathan was long dead. Nathan had been dead since season 1. And now here's some cicadas, which was Nathan's fear. Nathan's fear would have been very effective against Nathan, but here, but
Yeah.
here is the one thing. So yeah, what other fears might be manifested? And I don't know if Boyd had access to that. Was it Boyd? Did she? I don't even know if this Sarah. I can't remember who Sarah told that story about Nathan hating cicadas too.
Kenny.
But
That was
oh,
She was
okay.
telling it to Kenny when they were both in the sheriff's station, right around the same time that
Oh,
Sarah almost killed herself there.
okay,
Um,
okay. So Boyd would
yeah,
not have had that information about
not
when
yet.
fake Abby's trying to tell him that it's not fear, that it's hope. So it's
Mhm.
fear that they feed off of.
Yeah,
Obviously, if they're manifesting somebody's actual physical fears, like an actual
yeah.
phobia.
And
Yeah.
maybe as Mr. Bojangle says, maybe there's a little something to this, that maybe once you die,
Mm,
your fears can become physically manifested within Fromville, because that's what, at least that's what Sarah was believing anyway. She
okay.
thought that since the cicadas were Nathan's biggest fear, and right after Nathan died, boom, we get these cicadas. So I mean, there's a little bit of evidence pointing to that. Yeah, maybe when you die, your fears can physically become manifested from the forest. But
I wonder what
it's
Abby's fear was.
yeah, what exactly would Abby's fear be?
Was
I mean, I
Frank's
have to
fear?
imagine it. Frank's fear is probably the bar running out of booze. Um, but for Tabby, I have to imagine it has to be something regarding the loss of her son Thomas. I mean, it seems like that's the big root of Tabitha and Jim's traumas and fears. We haven't seen that storyline come back into play too much, but I don't know why. I get the feeling that there's going to be some kind of big reveal in terms of Thomas's death and what really happened and how it really happened. I get the feeling there's some kind of reveal there. It's just purely
Right.
speculative, of course. I have no evidence to base it on. It's just a feeling, but I get
Yeah.
the feeling there's some kind of reveal there that we
Well,
haven't heard yet.
if they just talked about it or, and even moped about it or whatever, that's, that would be one thing. But for the fact that
Yeah,
when she was walking up when she was having the vision of walking up the lighthouse tower and they had the baby crying,
yeah,
that for me was like, ooh, that told me not a red herring, not a loose end, not a
that's
whatever.
a
There's
narrative
something to
plot.
this.
That's a
Yeah, they're
plot
they're
point.
putting it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Some people theorize that Victor's sister was afraid of Civil War soldiers because she drew them, but honestly, that's a bit odd, even for a kid. LOL. I mean, I suppose. I mean, yeah, we do see the Eloise drawing of those two Civil War soldiers that Jade ends up seeing later, and maybe could that potentially have been one of Eloise's fears that was manifested within the forest? Potentially. But then again, I get the feeling Eloise isn't dead. I think Eloise is still alive. And if there is something to the rule that you have to die here in order for your fears to be manifested, maybe it's not the case. Although that might not be the case at all. You might not actually have to die for your fears to be manifested here. That might not be the case. Again, it's one of those gray areas where it's just so much we still don't know. But it's an interesting theory nonetheless. I like interesting theories like that, that maybe Eloise is tied to the Civil War soldiers popping up. So if randomly the Boyd traveled with the candy bar in the past and told Father Cotchery what happens, he may stop the child's death. Ooh, interesting. Interesting. So if randomly the Boyd traveled with the candy bar in the past and told Father Cotchery what happens, he may stop the child's death. In terms of the child's death in the real world that came up to Father Cotchery asking him for help. Ooh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
So more than just the torch and more than just what lunchbox, the things that allow people to travel through different dimensions, right?
Yeah, yep. The idea does play into Victor not remembering what drawings are real, but I still don't buy that this is a dreamland. I hope it's not really. I hope that it's not some kind of big dreamland mass hallucination hysteria thing going on here. I really hope that's not the case. And I think we've seen enough evidence pointing to the fact that they are indeed awake and this is a physical place that they are stuck in. It's just a very strange physical place that they're stuck in. So I really hope it's not some big dream landscape. I really hope that's not the case. If Julie ends up in the hospital and tells her past self about Thomas's death, then maybe it won't happen. I mean, time travel really makes me very nervous when it comes to this show. If anyone's been here for a while, I'm sure you guys have heard me say time travel, for me anyway, time travel can ruin a good story quicker than almost anything else. Because I feel like time travel sometimes gets introduced into stories as a kind of lazy method for tying some things up where sometimes more clever writers will tie things up in a narrative sense. Sometimes time travel can just be a cheap trick in some shows and movies, and it can really ruin them at times. So whenever I think about the time travel aspect to From, I get very, very nervous because if they do go the time travel route, they really need to have a very solid plan laid out before they do that. Because again, bad time travel ruins a good story faster than almost anything else. So if they are potentially going to go down some kind of time travel road, which they certainly could. I mean, there's so much stuff that is being weaved in and out of this show that there's so much that could potentially happen. If they do go down the time travel route, I just hope that they have seriously thought it through first, because time travel almost ruined Lost. You're not going to find a bigger Lost fanatic anywhere in the world than me. I absolutely love Lost. I love the ending. I feel like it was the perfect ending to that show, where I know not a lot of people liked it. But the time travel storyline in season 5 of Lost nearly ruined that show. Luckily, they were able to pull it back from the brink and fix it in that final episode. But time travel really very nearly ruined Lost. And I really hope that they kind of stay away from that trope, to be honest. I don't really want to see time travel in From. I feel like there's so many time travel stories out there. I feel like time travel has become a very kind of, not cheap, but it has definitely become a trope. And I really hope that this show kind of manages to stay away from certain tropes like that. I feel like time travel, if done wrong, could ruin this show. And I don't want to see that happen. I love what this show is doing. It's setting up so many interesting things narratively in terms of world building, character development, where this thing is going, all of the different mysteries, all of the different threads that we can pull on. I don't want to see them introduce time travel as a way to kind of quickly clean up a loose end, where as opposed they could probably come up with a more clever aspect or a clever reasoning for some of these answers. I just feel like time travel is, I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of time travel, I guess, is
I
what
agree.
I'm trying to
Well,
say.
this isn't the place for it. This is not the place for time.
I don't think this is the show for
Looper,
time
great
travel.
time travel because it's a movie about time travel. Time Cop, a
Dark?
great movie about time travel because it's about time travel.
You want to talk about good time travel? It doesn't get better than Dark. Dark has the best time travel story that I've ever seen, personally. Obviously, Back to the Future is great, but that's a fun, popcorny movie. In terms of actual, real, good rules surrounding time travel, it doesn't get better than Dark, as far as I'm concerned. Dark is so good. Outlander isn't bad. I mean, I love Outlander, but the time travel aspect to Outlander is actually the thing that I like least about it. Whereas, and the thing about the Outlander time travel is they don't really use time travel too much. Yes, you see Claire go through the stones a few times, but it's usually it's pretty contained, that time travel. So it doesn't really ruin the story where Outlander is concerned. But Dark's pretty much entire premise is based on time travel, but it's based on a very clever way of time travel. They really crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's when it comes to dark time travel. So if anyone does like time travel stories, I would highly recommend checking out Dark on Netflix. It's so good. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Ravener. I just feel like this isn't the show for time travel. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a clever way that they could introduce it, but I really hope they don't. I really hope they stay away from time travel in this show. Time travel is done well in 12 Monkeys. Yeah, 12 Monkeys, I've actually never seen 12 Monkeys. I've heard good things about it, but I've still never seen it. We got Michael Bancroft in the chat. What is up, Mike? Good to see you, my friend, and so awesome to see that you are nearing the end of the road for the Lucent Painted Death. Mike is getting super close to going to print, which is so awesome. I think he was in pre-press last time I spoke to him. But yeah, please, no time travel, no simulation, no multiverse. And I would add no aliens either to that as well. I feel like they could go the aliens route if it's a different version of aliens that we've never seen before. I am totally cool with that. But I just don't want this to be a same old recycled aliens abducting people and shoving them into a weird experiment. I feel like that trope has been used way too many times. So if they do go the alien route, I hope it's a version of the alien story that we haven't seen before. That could be pretty cool. But yeah, please no time travel and please no simulation. Those are my two big tropes that I really hope the show stays away from. But that's just me. That is just me. Let's see what we got. Let me scroll down here and catch up on a few more of these before we get ready to close it down this evening. I do think Elgin dreamt about Fromland, but I don't really want him to be the time-traveling son of Fatima. That's right. I forgot about that theory. Yes. Yeah, during season 2, when he first showed up, a lot of people were thinking that he could potentially be the son of Fatima and Ellis from the future. I mean, it's a funny theory. In theory, it's kind of funny. But I really hope that's not the case as well. I hope that's not who he really is anyway. Let's see. Lost interest in Dark, so only watched the first 1.5 seasons. Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. I know season 2 gets a little at times, but season 3 is probably the best season. But no, it's totally cool if you couldn't get through it. It's not for everybody. That's totally fine. The moment you introduce the concept of traveling back in time, you have an inescapable paradox. Indeed, exactly. It does. It creates a little bit of a problem. As many problems as it solves, it creates just as many if it's not done right. And again, that's just why I'm not a big fan of time travel stories. I feel like 9 times out of 10, writers have very good intentions when it comes to adding time travel into stories. But again, 9 times out of 10, it ends up just coming off cheap, and it's just a bad trope in a lot of cases. So, yeah, I really hope they stay away from the time travel. I really hope they stay away from it. And if they do go the time travel route, I hope they have a very clever explanation for the rules behind it. I don't know, Futurama time travel where Fry is his own grandfather was pretty well done. I have not seen that myself. I've actually never seen Futurama, so I can't speak to that one myself personally. But if Rooftop Korean says it was done well, then I tend to agree with Rooftop Korean. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. Let's see what else we got. A third of the way through pre-press on Painted Death. Hell yes, Mike. I cannot freaking wait to read it. And for all of our From fans, this right here is a pal of mine by the name of Michael Bancroft. He is an independent comic book creator who has created his own comic books. He is currently on issue 2 of his comic book series called The Lucent. The first one was the Lucent Waking Dream. It was so freaking fun. And if you like a good mystery style story like From, and if you do like comic books, the Lucent is definitely a kind of comic book that you would probably really enjoy. It sets up a lot of very similar themes and storylines that we really love about From and Lost and the mystery box style of storytelling. A lot of these themes are very present in Michael Bancroft's comic book series. So if you guys are so inclined, check out Michael's comic book series. You can find it at thelucent.com. And cannot wait for issue 2, my friend. I am waiting with bated breath. I cannot wait to read issue 2 of The Lucent. So that's awesome. I'm glad to know that it is coming along swimmingly. It's awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Aliens is just as lazy as a simulation. It can be. Yeah, it definitely can be. I feel like there's some clever alien stories out there. Every once in a while, aliens are done very, very interesting and cleverly. But it's another one of those tropes where it can really cheapen a good story super fast if it's not done right. If you end up falling into the same old alien tropes that a lot of other shows and movies fall into, then all of a sudden From just isn't quite as unique and special as it once was. I feel like what makes From so special and so unique is because we're seeing so many things that we haven't really seen in many other shows, whether that's themes, narratives, characters, storylines, side plots, background information. We're seeing a lot of stuff in From that we just don't really see a whole lot of in a lot of other shows. And that's what makes From, for me anyway, so unique and so special, because it's really breaking the mold in a lot of senses, and it's throwing some interesting stuff at us that we haven't really seen a whole lot of. So if they do kind of fall into those kind of common tropes of aliens, simulations, and stuff like that, I just feel like it could cheapen. I just feel like it could potentially cheapen what is a phenomenal and intriguing story up until this point. So yeah, I
Oh,
really hope they stay away from time travel.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be one thing, it would be a show of its own if it was simply these people got trapped in this town. Every time they try to drive out, they end up back inside of it. And now these X number of people have to figure out what situation they're in and how to get out of it. Adding the monsters, adding that the horror aspect is what really elevates From into something entirely different and something not predictable, because it's not just, oh, okay, this is some kind of quantum loop where they're getting pulled around, and you can't go
Mhm.
past this point, and they have to figure out a scientific, and sadly enough, especially in series, especially in Hollywood, they'll just give you some like mumbo jumbo, some scientific jargon that the average person will just go, well, I don't understand it, but it sounds like it's
Yeah.
smart, so therefore I will accept it.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's exactly why I don't like a lot of those tropes, because sometimes writers will throw those tropes into shows, and and when you're expecting that level of reaction from your audience, that's basically you saying that you don't think your audience is clever. And that's the kind of shows that I really stay away from. That's why I really love and respect From, and why I have a great deal of respect for the writers and creators behind From, because they're treating their audience like adults. They are giving us a story that is challenging us. And that is what I like in TV shows. When shows treat their audience, when a show is holding the audience's hand, that tells me that the show or the writers behind the show don't have that much faith in the audience smarts. But From, they're not holding our hands in any way, shape, or form. They are challenging us at every turn. And I really respect the writers of From for that. They are giving us a great mystery to solve, and they're not holding our hands. And up until now, they're not falling into those common tropes that we see in a lot of sci-fi and horror
Mhm.
movies and shows. So
Yeah,
I just
and
have a
I
lot
mean,
of respect for the
yeah,
writers.
and I think they did, and that's why I really hope season 3 goes back to the spirit of season 1, which, remember the very first scene. The season 1, episode 1, scene 1 is Megan getting
Granny.
sliced and diced. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That really laid out on the table where they're going, that nothing is sacred. Nothing is more abhorrent than a child getting killed, and the death of a child, that kind of stuff. And they laid it out on the table from the jump that, hey, nothing is off the table. This is the world that these people inhabit, which is dark and brutal, and these guys are trying to survive in an unforgiving world, and we're not going to cut away and just show like a blood splash or something. They're going to show the aftermath, and they're going to and there was a narrative reason why they, like, Boyd forced Frank to look at the results of his drunken neglect. He had to, Boyd forced him, look at your fucking daughter laying there with her rib cage ripped apart. So
Yeah.
that's something I really appreciated in this show early on, and I hope they get back to that in season 3. Bring us back into that world that we fell in love with. Not so much esoteric, weird, oh, is it a dream, is it not a dream, is it here's a raw, just, man, give us give it what is it, dance with who brought you.
Dance with the one who brung you. Yes. Yep. and absolutely, like, when you look at season 1, it was very much a straight up horror series. A supernatural horror series, but very much geared towards horror. I know the show is officially categorized as sci-fi, but I don't really put too much credence into official designations on shows these days, just because so many genres blend and kind of you get this amalgamation of all of these different genres kind of blended into one. So just because the show is labeled sci-fi, that doesn't necessarily tell me that there will be a sci-fi explanation to a lot of the things that are happening here on the show. I tend to think that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, I'm hoping anyway, has a little bit more of a supernatural aspect to it, a little bit more of a supernatural answer. But yeah, like you said, dance with the one who brung you. I feel like From is at its best when it's leaning heavily into its horror roots. I don't mind the show exploring some fantasy elements, some sci-fi elements, and other elements like that. It's good to experiment in some other elements. Like season 2 was the perfect example of them kind of experimenting a little bit more in the sci-fi fantasy type realm with the weird cicadas and entity and all of that. But at the end of the day, I do truly think From is at its best when it's being true to its horror roots. The colony, the massacre at Colony House in season 1 is, in my opinion, when this show was at its best. That is the best episode of From, period. With the exception of the very first episode. I think the very first episode, like you said, the first 5 minutes of the very first episode, the way they hook you right into this show with that just gnarly scene with Granny and Megan, it lets you know right off the bat of the threat that these residents are under with these monsters. And it also lets you know that this is the kind of show that isn't afraid to go into that territory. Not many shows will kill children like that, and kill children in a very violent and brutal manner like that. The fact that this show had the balls to do that, and do that in the very first 5 minutes, tells me that this is a serious show. This is a show that they are taking very seriously, and they want the audience to take it seriously as well. They want the audience to probably feel that at any given point, anyone can get killed. So I really, really like the horror roots of From more than any other aspect, and I hope we get a little bit more of that in season 3, because I feel like, again, I just feel like the show is at its best when it's operating on a horror standpoint. Again, that Colony House Massacre episode, man, such a phenomenal episode from start to finish in terms of introducing a problem that needs to get solved, and just the tragedy that happens along the way, capped off with the beautiful death of Father Cautry. I feel like that is when From is at its best. But hopefully we'll see a little bit more about that in season 3, and we'll get some main character deaths. But I know Ravener has to get up tomorrow for work, and I do as well. So we are going to close this one down. Oh, damn, I can't believe we've already been going for almost 3 hours. Time
I know.
freaking whips
I
by.
know.
Like,
But
time whips by talking about this show with everybody. I love
oh,
it.
for sure.
Absolutely
And don't
love it.
worry, guys, there will be plenty of From discussion in the
Plenty more.
upcoming weeks. Absolutely.
Oh,
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we are only just getting started. Of course, the From Season 3 hype train will continue every week leading up to the Season 3 premiere this fall. And hopefully you guys continue to come back and hang out with us. Again, I tried to go live every Tuesday and Friday night for the Fromville Hour, where we dive into a different aspect of From each week. And again, you guys have been so awesome sharing your thoughts, your theories, and your time with us. I know how precious time can be. I know I say it all the time, but I say it because I truly mean it. Anyone who takes even a little bit of time out of their busy day to come and hang out with us and talk theories and everything, I can't appreciate all of you enough. You guys really are so awesome. And I definitely look forward to these streams, probably more than any other streams that we do here on the channel. I absolutely love From, but even more than that, I love the From community that has kind of popped up around our small channel here. So I can't thank each and every one of you guys enough. And of course, we have House of the Dragon just around the corner as well. From is definitely my favorite, but House of the Dragon is definitely right up there with From as well. I love A Song of Ice and Fire. It's my favorite world. And yes, we have House of the Dragon Season 2 just a few weeks away now. So hopefully some of you guys come back and hang out with us for our House of the Dragon Season 2 coverage, which we will definitely be doing a lot of here on the channel, along with our From Season 3 coverage as well. But yeah, get ready, guys. House of the Dragon just around the corner. And of course, when House of the Dragon ends, From season approaches. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. These shows are lining up super perfectly, where as soon as House of the Dragon Season 2 is end, From Season 3 will likely be starting not very long after. So definitely come back and hang out with us for all of the awesome conversations and discussions that we are going to have right here on the channel. But as always, biggest thanks goes out to the awesome chat. Again, I can't thank each and every one of you for sharing your time, your thoughts, and your theories with all of us. We really look forward to doing these streams, and it's always an absolute blast. And look, what do you know? 3 hours whips by. I feel like we've only been up here for an hour. But you guys are the absolute best. We are going to get ready to close it down now. But as Ravener said, we are definitely going to keep this From hype train alive all the way up until Season 3 comes around. And of course, definitely join us for some of our House of the Dragon Season 2 content as well. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay kind to one another, and as always, keep those tinfoil hats on, folks, and we will see you on the next one.